Shiyu, congratulations on successfully becoming an overgod. In the future, you will also be a famed expert of the divine kingdom of Pingtian. Jianchen congratulated Shiyu sincerely with a happy smile when he saw her. Shiyu, congratulations on successfully becoming an overgod. In the future, you will also be a famed expert of the divine kingdom of Pingtian. Jianchen congratulated Shiyu sincerely with a happy smile when he saw her. There was not a lot of overgods in the divine kingdom of Pingtian. Coupled with the fact that a few had died during the battle against the Empyrean demon cult, there were even fewer overgods now. Now that Shiyu had successfully become an overgod in these circumstances, her status would be extremely great in the divine kingdom of Pingtian. Shiyu wore a luxurious white dress, while her black, glossy hair had been specially styled into a bun at the back of her head. As a result, she completely lacked the heroic spirit from before. Instead, she seemed more like the treasured daughter of a large clan. I could only become an overgod so quickly because of the patriarch's nurturing. Shiyu bowed slightly. She spoke softly, where her voice was extremely pleasant. The light in her eyes shone as she looked straight at Jianchen. Shiyu's talent was indeed very great. With the talent she had displayed right now, there was completely no need for her to take as long as she did to become an overgod. She could have accomplished it sooner. However, unfortunately, the Mo clan was just too weak. They were only a clan with a god, so they did not have that many resources to raise a prodigy like Shiyu. As a result, Shiyu only became a deity after 2,000 years of cultivation in the Mo clan. Only after meeting Jianchen did she receive full support in nurturing, gaining both large amounts of divine crystals and guidance in comprehending the laws of the sword. Her strength had skyrocketed after that, so she went from the deity before to an overgod now in such a short amount of time. Shiyu's talent is no less than the prodigies of large clans. Jianchen could not help but be amazed as well. He had met quite a few prodigies from those ancient empires in the past few days, so he possessed some understanding towards them. Now that he compared Shiyu to those so-called prodigies, he found that Shiyu was actually far more impressive than them. Jianchen looked at Shiyu with some mixed feelings. He said, "Shiyu, staying at the Tianyuan clan is basically wasting away your talent. The current Tianyuan clan can no longer provide for you such that you can grow faster. Staying here will only waste your potential. Only those peak sects in eternal empires can allow you to climb higher and further. Are you chasing me away?" Shiyu looked at Jianchen as her face became slightly gloomy and depressed. Jianchen shook his head and sighed gently, "I don't intend to chase you away. I'm just thinking for you. I hope you are able to go as far as you can on the path of cultivation, or even reach the apex of the saints' world." The patriarch of the Mo clan from before, Mo Xingfeng, looked at Shiyu and sighed inside. He said, The patriarch is right. Consider the patriarch's suggestion to join those larger sections." Mo Xingfeng had basically watched Shiyu grow up. There was no other person who understood Shiyu better than him. He felt very helpless about this. He truly wished from the bottom of his heart that Shiyu could leave the Tianyuan clan temporarily and join those powerful sections. It would be better for her like that. "No, don't let Sister Shiyu go. Sister Shiyu, don't leave me, okay? I really don't want to separate from you." At this moment, Mo Yen also ran over. She clung onto Shiyu's arm tightly as she spoke with much unwillingness to part with her. Afterwards, she waved her little fist at Jianchen angrily and said fiercely, "Patriarch Jianchen, you can't let Sister Shiyu go, or I'll never forgive you." Jianchen smiled and looked at Mo Yen rather helplessly. Although Mo Yen was older than him, he had begun to treat her as his little sister long ago. He wanted to protect Mo Yen from the bottom of his heart. However, once Jianchen thought about Mo Yan's cultivation, he felt pained. This girl disliked cultivation very much, and she would put up an attitude as soon as it was mentioned. As a result, she basically made no progress across the years, remaining at sainthood. "Thank you for your concern, Patriarch, but I have no interest in joining those large sections. Moreover, haven't you, Patriarch, not joined any large sects either, and your strength still grows rapidly? As a result, I believe that I too can become a powerful expert even if I don't join those large sects," Shiyu said firmly. Jianchen was helpless from Shiyu's insistence. He could only sigh gently inside before turning around and leaving. Unknowingly, Jian Chen had already arrived in the forbidden grounds of the Tian Yuan clan. A powerful formation enveloped the forbidden grounds, and only a handful of people possessed the right to enter the place. Standing in the forbidden grounds, Jian Chen could not help but think of Shangguan Mu. Originally, Shangguan Mu should have been cultivating here, waiting for him to come home. However, he had never thought that his visit to the northern region would result in their separation. Mu, I wonder if you've arrived at the Taoist sect of Divine Sound and if they're treating you well? You have to spend your time well there and wait for me to pick you up. Although I don't know where the Skyfire plane is or just how distant it is from the Cloud plane, I will definitely go there. Jian Chen clasped his fist tightly as determination filled his eyes. However, Jian Chen's eyes suddenly narrowed, and he turned around. A slender figure stood behind him silently, looking at Jian Chen calmly. Kaya, it's you. Jian Chen was surprised. He looked at Kaya with complete shock as his heart was in turmoil. This was because he had actually failed to sense Kaya approach him at all earlier. He did not even know when Kaya had appeared behind him and how long she had been standing there. Jian Chen immediately looked at her with his full attention, studying Kaya carefully. That immediately made him gasp as disbelief filled his face. His heart churned. Kaya, your cultivation, Jian Chen said in shock. At that moment, he struggled to believe what he was seeing. He discovered that Kaya's strength had actually risen to late over God in such a short amount of time. Jian Chen felt like he was dreaming. Just how long ago had Kaya woken up for? When she woke up, she was only a Saint Emperor, yet she had already become a late over God now. Jian Chen was stunned by how quickly her strength had increased. It was so fast that it even left Jian Chen in the dust. With that speed, probably only Fairy Hao Yu, who had been a primordial realm expert in her former life, could surpass Kaya. Jian Chen, thank you for the monster core and all those divine crystals. It's exactly because of them that my cultivation has managed to grow so rapidly, Kaya said to Jian Chen. From her indifferent expression, it was as if she did not know just how great of a disturbance her speedy cultivation could have created in the saint's world. Cultivation can be increased by absorbing a large number of divine crystals. But the comprehension of the laws of the world, Jian Chen hesitated. Kaya had surprised him far too much. A sliver of confusion appeared in Kaya's eyes. She said, I don't know why either. My comprehension of the laws of the world seems to be especially easy, where I can grasp the laws without any effort. I've already grasped 3 laws now. And it seems like I can absorb the energy of divine crystals thousands of times faster than others. As she said that, Kaya immediately used the power of laws with a thought. Immediately, 3 different types of laws condensed. Jian Chen was stunned when he saw the laws revolve around Kaya. He murmured, the laws of destruction, the laws of fire, and the last one seems to be the laws of creation. To Jian Chen's great surprise, Kaya's 3 laws had all reached late over God. Jian Chen looked at Kaya with extremely mixed feelings. The shock that Kaya had brought was just far too great. Many of them could not be comprehended with logic. Her strength had increased so quickly that it was unbelievable. Her cultivation speed and ease of comprehending laws even made Jian Chen suspect that Kaya was the reincarnation of some supreme expert. This was because, according to his understanding, only a primordial realm expert like Fairy Hao Yu, who retained all her memories, could increase their strength so quickly. Kaya, your cultivation has been smooth sailing. It could even be called without any effort, with no exaggeration. You haven't come across any bottlenecks at all. However, I must advise you to not cultivate too quickly, or your foundations will weaken. Jian Chen looked at Kaya and said sternly. Kaya was not Fairy Hao Yu after all. Jian Chen felt slightly worried about how quickly she had been cultivating. He was worried that Kaya would suffer from extreme side effects from cultivating so quickly, which would affect her future. She might even be doomed in the end. Yeah, I understand that as well. As a result, I don't plan on cultivating for the next period of time. Instead, I'll devote myself to consolidating my cultivation, just in case it really does lead to any side effects. Kaya agreed. After hesitating slightly, she stared at Jian Chen with brimming interest and said rather energetically, Jian Chen, although I'm a late overgod now, I only possess the strength. I haven't fought anyone before, so I don't know how powerful I actually am. Why don't we spar so that I can try my current battle prowess? Fair enough. The Saints' world is no different from the Tian Yuan continent. You never had much battle experience on the Tian Yuan continent. Now that you've come to the Saints' world, there's even more reason for you to gain some proper experience. At the same time, you've gained such a great amount of strength in such a short amount of time. This strength also needs to experience battle after battle. Only then will you be able to use it with familiarity. Jian Chen agreed extremely happily before leaving the Tian Yuan clan with Kaya. As Kaya was already a late overgod, the shockwaves of the battle between the two of them would definitely be far more than the provincial city could endure. As a result, Jian Chen chose to spar far away from the city. He selected a remote mountain range. Jian Chen hovered above the mountains and looked at Kaya calmly. Kaya, go ahead. Jian Chen, be careful, Kaya said sternly. With that, her presence changed suddenly. At the same time, the temperature in the surroundings skyrocketed. Fire appeared around Kaya, flickering in the space and giving off terrifying heat. It dyed the surroundings red. The thick layer of clouds in the sky directly dispersed at that moment. The terrifying heat from Kaya's flames had vaporized them. Jian Chen could not help but become rather stern as he stared at the laws of fire that filled Kaya's surroundings. He thought, strange. Kaya's laws of fire seem slightly different from other people's. It's as if her laws are even purer compared to the laws of fire from other late overgods. If there were some impurities within the laws of fire from other overgods, then Kaya's laws of fire would have no impurities at all. It is extremely pure. Jian Chen felt extremely surprised once again. Kaya was simply extraordinary. At this moment, Kaya moved. The flickering flames around her turned into an endless sea of fire, flying towards Jian Chen quickly with terrifying heat. The presence she gave off was even more surprising, directly plunging into the sky and shaking up the ground. She sent out a palm strike, and the endless sea of fire moved with that. The flames all gathered together at that moment, compressing into the size of a hand. It shone with light as dazzling as the sun, preventing people from staring at it directly. A gleam of light flickered through Jian Chen's eyes. He became extremely stern. He did not use the startling rainbow sword. Instead, he also struck out with his hand like Kaya. The palm strike was accompanied by chaotic force, which gave off a presence of destruction. The laws of the sword revolved around it, so his strike possessed both black and white. Boom! The two strikes collided and produced a deep rumble. Terrifying energy shot off in all directions, and the mountains beneath them all crumbled, kicking dust into the air. In the sky, Jian Chen and Kaya stood unmoving. Their hands remained pressed together. One of them shone with black and white light as chaotic force and the laws of the sword churned. The other hand was dazzling, like the sun that had been shrunken. It was blinding and gave off a terrifying heat, turning the surroundings red as if even the air had been burnt. Jian Chen shivered. Even though he had only used 70% of his strength in this strike, Kaya had managed to match him. This surprised him. However, in the next moment, his hand moved such that only a few fingers remained extended. A beam of light 3 inches long shot out, and he directly slashed it at Kaya's hand. Even though the sword chi had shot out from Jian Chen's fingers, he was already using 80% of his strength, so the sword chi could tear through almost anything. The laws of fire that had been suppressed in Kaya's hand were directly cleaved in half by Jian Chen, causing them to split. However, the laws of fire did not disperse. Instead, they turned into 2 flaming streaks of red light as they shot towards Jian Chen with unbelievable speed. At the same time, Kaya sent out a second palm strike. It was covered with flames as it crushed towards Jian Chen with great might. Immediately, Jian Chen seemed to feel a mysterious power fill his surroundings as if he had fallen into mud. All his movements dulled. Jian Chen's eyes narrowed. Kaya's strike had completely taken him by surprise. Moreover, he discovered that Kaiya's usage of the laws of fire had already reached great mastery, and it was nothing like someone who had just comprehended laws. Moreover, he could clearly sense that Kaiya's strikes seemed to possess some type of profound truth. Clearly, it was just a simple strike, but it resonated with the world as if each strike was a battle skill, making it extremely powerful. Everything happened in a split second. Just when the two strands of laws shot towards Jian Chen at great speed, Jian Chen extended his fingers as well, sending out two strands of sword qi to block the two attacks from Kaiya. Afterwards, he brought his hands together. Chaotic force churned, and a black strand of sword qi a meter in length appeared silently. He stabbed it out with the presence of destruction. Even though the two of them were sparring to check on Kaiya's strength, the two of them fought with great intensity. Booms rang out in the sky as the laws of the sword and the laws of fire mingled, colliding time and time again. The mountains below had already been reduced to a mess. The countless specks of green on the mountains had been reduced to ash, and when some sparks fell down, the tough rock was even reduced to a red liquid in just a few short seconds. Jian Chen's strength had gone up from the initial 70% to 80% now. However, when Kaiya used her laws of destruction, combining them with the laws of fire, she forced Jian Chen to use 90% of his strength, even making him draw the startling rainbow sword. Kaiya's battle prowess had already surpassed the limits of late Overgod when she used the laws of destruction. It was basically approaching God King. It was not because the laws of destruction were too powerful. In terms of the simple rankings of offensive power, the laws of destruction were equal to the laws of the sword. However, Kaiya's laws of destruction were the same as her laws of fire. She was able to display extraordinary might as if she possessed unimaginable understanding and grasp over both the laws of fire and the laws of destruction. As a result, she could unleash power beyond her cultivation level. Jian Chen even suspected that his understanding and grasp over the laws of the sword were not as great as Kaiya's laws of fire and destruction. This was because Kaiya's usage of the two laws would seem perfect even in Jian Chen's eyes from time to time. It was extraordinary. Is Kaiya born to use the laws of fire and destruction? Jian Chen even experienced such strange thoughts. However, at this moment, darkness descended. The world suddenly darkened as a huge, demonic cloud stretched over the sky, obscuring the sun and throwing the mountain range into darkness. Jian Chen, you sure are bold. You've offended our Empyrean demon cult, yet you're still not hiding properly in the royal capital so that the divine king can protect you. Instead, you come to this area of wilderness. A cold voice filled with killing intent rang out as the darkness descended. The sudden change made Jian Chen and Kaiya stop their spar. When the somewhat familiar voice rang out, Jian Chen's face abruptly changed. Huayan! Jian Chen growled. He became extremely grim and pushed Kaiya far away without any hesitation. He called out, "Run!" Jian Chen had never thought that as one of the three great vice leaders of the Empyrean demon cult, Huayan would come personally for him. This immediately made his heart sink. Huayan was a primordial realm expert. With Jian Chen's current strength, he could not even flee before someone like that. Kaiya did not run away. She arrived before Jian Chen again and raised her head at the sky. Her gaze seemed to be able to pierce through the dark clouds and see the figure hidden in there. Seeing how Kaiya did not run away, Jian Chen immediately panicked. He called out, "Why did you come back? Go, leave this place as quickly as possible." Kaiya shook her head as she looked at how flustered Jian Chen had become. She said seriously, "I'm not running. If we're going to run, you run first. My life was saved by you. How can I run away all by myself when you're in danger?" Kaiya's calm voice was firm. Kaiya shook her head as she looked at how flustered Jian Chen had become. She said seriously, "I'm not running. If we're going to run, you run first. My life was saved by you. How can I run away all by myself when you're in danger?" Kaiya's calm voice was firm. "Shh, how are you so stupid? This is a primordial realm expert. He's so powerful that even if we work together, we won't be able to put up a fight at all. He has come especially for me, and it has nothing to do with you. If you leave, he won't pursue you, But if you stay, you'll just lose your life for nothing, Jianchen said in a panic. He hoped to persuade Kaya to leave. He knew just how great the difference between him and primordial realm experts was. It was basically a chasm. As a result, he had already given up on running before an expert like that. This was because he understood that even if he used the linear lightning release before someone like that, he would not be able to escape. Jianchen, you're about to die, yet you're still worrying about other people. It looks like this girl is quite important to you. Whatever. Since that's the case, I'll kill you both. Huai An's sneer rang out like thunder. Afterwards, the clouds in the sky churned wildly and condensed into a huge palm that gave off a terrifying, devastating presence. At the same time, the other two vice leaders of the Empyrean demon cult sat within a hall as black mist completely shrouded their bodies. It looks like this Huayan really can't resist moving against Jianchen, an old voice rang out. The vice leader called Elder Sen had spoken, and there was some helplessness on his face. I knew this would happen. Huayan is a vengeful person after all. Not only has Jianchen protected the successor of Huayan's enemy, Duanmu, but Huayan was also forced to do things against his will recently with how Yashi Lian was captured and used against him by the Divine King. In the end, he could only agree to the Divine King's ceasefire without any other choice. Jianchen directly contributed to this, so how can Huayan not resent him? Moreover, the brat called Jianchen really does possess impressive talent. If he manages to mature successfully, he'll definitely become a peak expert. As a result, Huayan needs to move now to kill him before he has fully grown up, or Huayan will be the one in trouble once Jianchen truly becomes powerful, said Yi Huayue. I don't care about Jianchen's life or death. It's just that I don't feel like the reactions from above are as simple as they seem regarding the loss of the blood and soul beads. There must be something hidden in there we don't know. I even suspect that the loss of the blood and soul beads were planned by the higher-ups. If it really was planned, I'm afraid that Huayan might ruin it all if he attacks Jianchen. The consequence of that isn't something we can bear, Elderson said with some worry. Elderson, we've already warned Huayan. It's he who insists on doing it. If his actions really do foil the plans of the higher-ups, it'll be his burden alone to bear. It has nothing to do with us, said Yi Huayue. Although the three vice leaders possessed different strengths, their statuses were the same, so they did not have the authority to stick their noses into each other's businesses. Now that Huayan had set off all by himself, the two of them had no right to interfere. That's reasonable. In short, we can't take part in this matter. Let's just wait and see, nodded Elder Senator. Huayan hovered in the demonic clouds within the divine kingdom of Pingtian. As his palm pressed down gently, the hand condensed from the endless clouds immediately crushed down towards Jianchen and Kaya with a terrifying pressure. A strike from a primordial realm expert was so powerful that the terrifying pressure caused all the mountains below to rumble heavily. Before the hand had reached them, the rocks were already crushed, unable to endure the pressure. Jianchen and Kaya were immobilized as the hand fell towards them as if they had been trapped where they were. Jianchen became extremely grim as he watched the hand slowly descend from the sky. Even though he knew he was probably doomed today, he was not just going to sit here and wait for his fate. In the next moment, two strands of finger-sized sword chi hovered above his head, radiating with sword intent. At this moment, the only thing he could use was the profound sword chi. The fusion of the twin swords was impossible. Once he revealed them before a primordial realm expert, there was just too great of a chance of exposing himself. At that time, he and Kaya would not be the only ones dead. The Tian Yuan clan would be destroyed as well. The laws of creation, destruction, and fire revolved around Kaya. Her presence rapidly rose, and vaguely, some truths of the world seemed to revolve around her. Clearly, she was the same as Jianchen, wanting to put up a desperate stand. Swish, swish. With the two sounds, two resplendent streaks of white light shot off into the sky. Radiating with soaring sword intent, they rushed towards the hand condensed from the black clouds in an unstoppable manner. Jianchen struck out first, using the two strands of profound sword chi at the same time. However, once he used the two strands of sword chi, basically all the power of his soul was sapped. Waves of dizziness surged up. Afterwards, Kaya moved as well. The seal formed from her two hands changed, and the laws of creation, destruction, and fire jumped about on the tip of her finger. In the end, it condensed into a complicated and profound glyph that shot towards the sky with the presence of the world. Jian Chen's two strands of sword qi collided with the hand condensed from demonic aura. It directly penetrated the hand, creating a hole that was 10 meters wide. However, that was all. The profound sword qi was unable to penetrate through the hand completely, let alone disperse it. It only managed to create a hole before it completely dispersed. Boom. However, in the next moment, there was a deafening boom. The glyph condensed from Kaya's 3 different types of laws had landed as well. Kaya's usage of the laws had reached perfection, even surpassing Jian Chen's usage of the laws of the sword. As a result, her strike that contained 3 different types of laws naturally possessed extraordinary might. However, she was still an overgod after all. The difference from the primordial realm was still too great, so the glyph condensed from the 3 laws was still unable to block Huai An's casual strike. Kaya's glyph collapsed, while the huge hand continued onwards without slowing down at all. It engulfed Jian Chen and Kaya with devastating power. Just when Jian Chen and Kaya faced a moment of life and death, a clear thrum suddenly rang out. A huge, snow-white sword qi cut through the air, shooting over like it was teleporting. Wherever the sword qi passed by, origin energy trembled and even space ripped open, leaving behind an extremely thin, black crack. It was as if someone had drawn a line in the sky. The sword qi had directly cut through space. It must be mentioned that in the Saints' world, space was extremely tough. Even battles between god kings would only make space ripple slightly. Yet, space was like a piece of paper before this strand of sword qi. It had ripped as the sword qi swept through the air. Boom. Boom. The sword qi that possessed terrifying might directly collided with the hand condensed from demonic aura. It erupted with terrifying energy shockwaves, directly flattening the mountain range, causing the ground to crack and sink. The energy shockwave was truly terrifying. Even with Jian Chen and Kaya's strength, they struggled to endure it. The energy forced them into a constant retreat. If it were not for the fact that the energy shockwave came from a casual strike of a primordial realm expert, if it were not for the fact that the sword qi still had not dispersed after cutting through the demonic hand, blocking most of the energy for Jian Chen and Kaya, it would be difficult for the two of them to emerge unscathed before the terrifying storm. They would definitely end up injured. Swish. The whistling of wind rang out once again. After dispersing the hand, the sword qi continued to shoot into the demonic cloud with shocking might. The sword qi shimmered, shining as brightly as the sun. It illuminated the sky, dyeing all the demonic, black clouds in the sky white. Umph! A cold snort rang out from the demonic clouds. Primordial realm laws descended in the demonic clouds, forming chains that flickered through the clouds like lightning, colliding with the sword qi. This collision caused another deafening boom. Just the terrifying sound alone had caused the ground to shake violently as if the entire divine kingdom of Pingtian was experiencing a great earthquake. Not only did all the rocks in the ruined mountains turn to dust, but even large portions of the ground below collapsed, turning into dark abysses. Sword immortal. Jian Chen was surprised when he sensed the power of the sword qi. The person who had produced the sword qi had reached the 3rd major realm of cultivation in the way of the sword immortal. Jian Chen subconsciously turned around and saw a dignified middle-aged man in dragon robes stride through the sky. He was clearly extremely far away, where even Jian Chen only managed to see an extremely blurry image of him. However, in the next moment, he took a single step and traversed the great distance, directly appearing before Jian Chen. He stared at the figure hidden within the demonic clouds coldly. The middle-aged man was the Divine King. Huayan, you've overstepped the boundary. The Divine King's hair fluttered in the wind as he stood before Jian Chen. He solemnly stared at Huayan, who was hidden in the clouds, as he gave off the presence of a ruler. The laws of the sword revolved around him. The Divine King actually comprehends the laws of the sword. Jian Chen was secretly surprised. He was taken aback. The laws of the sword were one of the laws that possessed the greatest defensive power. A primordial realm expert who had comprehended the laws of the sword would definitely possess much greater prowess than primordial realm experts who comprehended other laws. Although Jianchen had spent some time with the Divine King, he did not know what kind of laws the Divine King had comprehended. Although the Divine King had used the power of laws in the war against the Empyrean demon cult before, they were hazy, only presented in the form of pure power. He did not clearly demonstrate the type of law they were. Only now did Jianchen learn that the Divine King was actually an expert who comprehended the laws of the sword. The cloud plane may be big, but I can go wherever I want. How can you say I've overstepped the boundary? Huai An's voice rang out from within the demonic clouds. Then he slowly emerged from them. However, he was not alone. Behind him hovered 3 figures silently. From the presences they gave off, they had all reached God King. Ping'an, I was expecting you to appear. However, do you really think you can keep the person that I want to deal with safe with your strength that has only recently reached the primordial realm? Huai sneered. Then, he said to the 3 people behind him, Go, bring me Jianchen and that girl. Yes, sir. The 3 God Kings behind Huai answered together. With a single movement, they flew towards Jianchen and Kaya. Leave. The Divine King growled at Jianchen. He waved his arm, and the laws of the primordial realm descended. The resplendent sword chi formed a huge chain that swept towards the 3 God Kings with terrifying might. A primordial realm expert's strike was absolutely frightening. Even though the 3 God Kings were not weak, all late God Kings, they were not supreme God Kings who had made it onto the God King's throne. As a result, they shivered when they faced the Divine King's casual strike. The presence of death pressed towards them as if the world was ending. Huai appeared before the 3 of them as if he had teleported. He blocked the Divine King's attack with composure and said, Ping'an, our battle last time never ended. Why don't we continue it in outer space? With that, Huai directly attacked the Divine King regardless of his response. Huai An's strike this time was on a completely different level compared to before. Before, he had struck out leisurely without using laws from the primordial realm. He had just condensed a hand out of demonic aura to use against Jianchen. This was because he knew the Divine King would definitely protect Jianchen secretly, so the strike before was only to draw him out. Huai did this to prevent the Divine King from dealing a sneak attack all of a sudden. Now that the Divine King had appeared, Huai was fearless. He used his full strength right from the start. The Divine King was grim. Huai attack was just too powerful. If he blocked it, the shockwaves created would result in heavy damage to the Divine Kingdom of Pingtian. With no other choice, he could only fly up towards outer space. Huai looked at the Divine King, and a cold smile appeared on his face. He also flew up, pursuing the Divine King. To another side, Jianchen and Kaya were already fleeing as quickly as they could. The 3 God Kings pursued them closely. As 2 late overgods, it was naturally impossible for them to be faster than the 2 late God Kings. As a result, the distance between them shrank rapidly. Jianchen and Kaya did not flee towards the Tianyuan clan. Instead, they traveled away from the clan, fleeing from the Divine Kingdom. With the Tianyuan clan's current strength, it was impossible for them to stop the 3 God Kings from the Empyrean demon cult. Even the God King level formations would not be enough to stop 3 late God Kings. Even if Mu Ku was there, it would not work either. As a result, they would only bring disaster to the clan if they returned. Basically, all of Jianchen's power of the soul had been drained when he used the 2 strands of profound sword qi. He was currently ingesting the soul recovery pills he had purchased from the Xiandao Empire, so Kaya basically carried him as they fled. However, Kaya once again demonstrated something that shocked Jianchen. She used some kind of secret technique that allowed her to fuse with the surroundings and move with unbelievable speed. The 3 God Kings actually struggled to catch up to them over a short period of time. You can't run, so just give up obediently. Behind them, one of the God Kings from the Empyrean demon cult called out. Terrifying, tremendous pressure poured from his body, and he formed a seal with his hand before suddenly extending a finger forwards. The space 10 kilometers away suddenly tremored, actually freezing up at that moment from the gesture. Jian Chen and Kaya were in the region of frozen space. Immediately, they felt a mysterious power lock down on their bodies, making it feel like they had ended up in mud. Their movements became extraordinarily slow, while their speed plummeted as well. Less than 10 kilometers separated them, so now that Jian Chen and Kaya had slowed down, the three God Kings caught up instantly. They struck out at the same time, where two targeted Jian Chen while the remaining dealt with Kaya. Immediately, tremendous, terrifying energy shook up the surroundings. Even though the three late God Kings were not as awe-inspiring as primordial realm experts when they unleashed their might, their strength was still shocking. Jian Chen bellowed out. He wielded the startling rainbow sword as his battle intent surged into the sky. He had already equipped the damaged armor he had taken back from the ancestor of the Mo family. The sword in his hand danced, and he produced 2 golden strands of sword qi. Even though the power of his soul still had not recovered in that short amount of time, making it impossible for him to use the profound sword qi, he was still able to put up a fight. Kaya moved on the other side as well. She was extremely grim as the power from the 3 types of laws revolved around her. As her hands danced, the 3 powers condensed into 3 swords and shot out. The God King who faced Kaya raised an eyebrow and was slightly surprised when he saw this. He murmured, These laws are slightly strange. The God King from the Empyrean demon cult had also noticed that the laws that Kaya used were slightly different. However, he did not have too much time to think about it. Their attacks collided together viciously. Spurt! Kaya puked up blood as her body was knocked away like a broken kite. The laws she used were rather different, and she had delivered a shocking attack with the 3 types of laws, but she was still just a late overgod after all. The difference between her and a late God King was too great. It was so great that even the 3 laws she could use were not enough to make up for it. At the same time, from just a single clash with the 2 God Kings, Jian Chen produced a bloody mist that contained most of his organs. He was also blown away like Kaya while the startling rainbow sword in his hand had dimmed. A slight crack had appeared on the guard of the sword as well, and it stretched across the entire sword. Late God Kings were just too powerful. Moreover, they had struck out together as well, so even with the protection of the God artifact, Jian Chen struggled to endure it, becoming extremely injured. Most importantly, only the surface of his God artifact had been repaired. As such, although it seemed to be in perfect condition, its defenses as a God artifact could not be used at all. Blood constantly spurted out of his mouth as Jian Chen flew backwards. Every single mouthful of blood contained pieces of his organs. He was able to put up a fight and win against early God Kings, but he would not be able to fight back at all against late God Kings. The difference between late and early God King was just far too great. At this moment, Kaya caught up to Jian Chen with a pale face and some residual blood at the corner of her lips. She grabbed him before gritting her teeth, fleeing into the distance without any hesitation. Haha, and you still want to run? If we really do let you 2 puny overgods escape, will the 3 of us still have the face to remain in the Hall of Protectors? The 3 God Kings laughed aloud behind as they looked at Kaya and Jian Chen like cats toying with their food. Jian Chen coughed up a few mouthfuls of blood as he glanced at the 3 pursuing God Kings coldly. Then he wrapped his left arm around Kaya's waist and formed a seal with his right hand, using the linear lightning release. Kaya immediately shuddered when Jian Chen wrapped his hand around her. She looked at Jian Chen with mixed emotions. In her memory, there had yet to be a man who had held her like that aside from her father. Moreover, she felt an intense repulsion towards a man touching her so closely like that. The repulsion rose up, growing stronger and stronger as if a voice constantly reminded her to resist. It had almost shaken her will, which would lead to her directly resisting Jian Chen. However, Kaya was in no position to think. She felt her body suddenly sink, and the surroundings turned into a blur instantly. The scenery around her shot past as blurry streaks of light. Jian Chen had already used the linear lightning release. He and Kaya were surrounded by light as they turned into a bolt of lightning and shot off into the distance with unbelievable speed. They were so fast that they could not be described as covering 1,000 kilometers in a split second. Instead, it was 10,000 kilometers or even several tens of thousand kilometers. The eyes of the three pursuing god kings of the Empyrean demon cult narrowed all of a sudden. Jian Chen and Kaya were so quick that it stunned them. Their speed had basically surpassed the limits of what the naked eye could see. Their movement could only be caught with the senses of the soul. Chase them. We can't let them escape. One of the god kings bellowed out and immediately used a secret technique with the other two god kings. Their speeds also skyrocketed all of a sudden, turning into three blurs as they chased. Jian Chen's linear lightning release was very fast, but the amount of time he could maintain it was far too short. They were unable to evade the senses of a god king's soul in such a short amount of time. As a result, even though Jian Chen and Kaya managed to flee to a point where the god kings were no longer able to see them, they still remained in the area the god king's senses of the soul covered. Over 100,000 kilometers away, the light around Jian Chen and Kaya slowly faded, and their terrifying speed brought on by the linear lightning release vanished. The three god kings had vanished behind them. However, they knew that they still had not shaken off the three god kings. As a matter of fact, they could even sense three extremely powerful presences rush over in the distance. They would be able to catch up in under a minute. Jian Chen, what do we do now? Kaya broke free from Jian Chen's arm without showing any repulsion and said worriedly, "Go dash." Just when Jian Chen wanted to talk, he aggravated his wounds, so he experienced a violent fit of coughing. A few more mouthfuls of blood and organs spurted out from his mouth. Even though he had only clashed once with the two god kings, his opponents were late god kings after all. Jian Chen suffered severe wounds from that. If it were not for his chaotic body, he would have collapsed long ago. "Jian Chen, how are you? You better heal first." "I'll carry you," Kaya said in concern. Jian Chen shook his head. He silently circulated his chaotic force to heal as he wolfed down a handful of healing pills and several soul recovery pills. Only then did he say with great difficulty and weakness, "You're not as fast as them. Right now, the only way we can travel is for me to use my sword technique. Only then do we have a chance at escaping. As long as we make it to the divine kingdom of Qingyang, we can shake them off. Let's go." Jian Chen wrapped his left hand around Kaya once again while he formed a seal with his right hand, continuing to cast the linear lightning release. Faced with such desperate times, he could no longer care about the bodily contact between men and women. Escaping from the three god kings was more important than anything. Kaya's feelings became extremely mixed. She would experience severe repulsion when Jian Chen touched her like that. However, when she thought about the danger the two of them faced today, she could only suppress this repulsion helplessly. Swish. As Kaya experienced mixed feelings, she and Jian Chen became surrounded with light once again. They shot off into the distance with lightning speed, covering several tens of thousand kilometers in a split second. They truly moved extremely quickly. With their speed, even late god kings would struggle to catch up. Even though the three god kings had already used secret techniques, they were still unable to traverse several tens of thousand kilometers in a split second. However, Jian Chen's linear lightning release was not perfect either. He was unable to maintain it for long, unlike the three god kings behind them who could maintain their greatest speed over prolonged periods. As a result, every time Jian Chen stopped after using the linear lightning release, the distance he had created from the god kings would be covered once again. This forced Jian Chen to use the linear lightning release constantly. Fortunately, his chaotic force was consumed extremely slowly. Moreover, he had never run out of energy during a battle due to it being overly drawn out after he began cultivating the chaotic body. Otherwise, he would probably run out of energy from just using the linear lightning release repeatedly as a late overgod. The earth stretched into the distance, and the rivers and mountains rapidly receded. As the two parties fled and pursued, they left the divine kingdom of Pingtian very soon, entering the boundary of the divine kingdom of Qingyang. As they fled, Jian Chen's wounds rapidly recovered thanks to the terrifying automatic regeneration of the chaotic body. Even though he devoted all his efforts to fleeing, his wounds did not worsen at all. Instead, they gradually improved. Kaiya's wounds took an evident turn for the better after ingesting the healing pills as well. Jianchen did not slow down. After entering the divine kingdom of Qingyan, he quickly found his bearings and shot off with the linear lightning release again. Behind them, the three god kings tailed closely. However, they maintained a distance of several tens of thousand kilometers throughout, unable to cover it. Even though it seemed extremely distant, experts like them could cover such a distance in under 10 seconds. As a result, Jianchen did not dare to relax. Before long, Jianchen arrived in a remote mountain range within the divine kingdom of Qingyang. He took Kaiya to a hidden valley with great familiarity and directly sent a strand of sword qi at a smooth rock face. With a boom, the wall was destroyed, revealing a cave. With a flash, Jianchen entered the gloomy cave with Kaiya. He made his way to the end of the cave as quickly as possible. There laid a perfect teleportation formation on the ground. At the same time, a terrifying pressure appeared, causing all the mountains to tremor. Now that Jianchen and Kaiya had slowed down, the three god kings caught up immediately. They moved extremely quickly, where they had even become visible on the horizon as black specks. Jianchen was grim. Immediately he entered the teleportation formation with Kaiya, and with a wave of his hand, he tossed out a few divine crystals to activate it. The two of them vanished silently under an intense white light. However, just when they were about to be transported away, Jianchen tossed out a fist-sized transparent crystal suddenly. When he and Kaiya had completely vanished, the crystal exploded loudly. Not only did it destroy the teleportation formation on the ground completely, but even the cave collapsed. The three god kings arrived before the collapsed cave with sunken faces. They've already fled through a teleportation formation, but the formation is not of a particularly high quality, so they can't be far. They shouldn't have escaped from the range of the senses of our souls yet, a god king growled as demonic aura churned around him. The three of them immediately expanded the senses of their soul as much as possible to search for the traces of Jianchen and Kaiya. Jianchen and Kaiya had already appeared in an ancient mountain range within the divine kingdom of Datian. A perfect teleportation formation laid there as well. Jianchen had cast down this teleportation formation after killing the three overgods from the Empyrean demon cult personally. He created it as a path of retreat for the Tianyuan clan. However, he had never thought that the teleportation formations he cast down in the past would not be used by people from the Tianyuan clan. Instead, it would serve as a path of survival for himself. I never thought there was such a well-hidden teleportation formation in the divine kingdom of Qingyang. Thank God for it, or it would have been almost impossible to escape from the three god kings. Kaiya patted her chest within the gloomy cave as she said in lingering fear. She looked at Jianchen and asked, "Jianchen, where are we right now? We should have escaped from the three god kings, right?" Jianchen remained grim. He shook his head in response to Kaiya and said, "We're currently in the divine kingdom of Datian. Although it's extremely distant from the divine kingdom of Qingyang, they're god kings after all, and late god kings at that. Their senses of the soul are so powerful that they can engulf an entire divine kingdom without any effort. As a result, we still haven't escaped from the range of their senses with where we are right now." However, when Jianchen finished talking, their faces both changed. At that moment, they could clearly sense extremely powerful senses of the soul sweep over. Just the pressure from the senses made them feel like they bore mountains on their backs. "They've already found us. Let's keep teleporting. I'd like to see if the senses of late god kings can extend from the divine kingdom of Qingyang to the heavenly moon empire," Jianchen said coldly. He pulled Kaiya into the teleportation formation and activated it again, leaving the cave. Like before, Jianchen destroyed the teleportation in the divine kingdom of Datian when they left to prevent the three god kings from using it. As a result, the three god kings could only slowly fly their way to the heavenly moon empire if they wanted to catch them. Although god kings flew extremely quickly, where it would not take them very long at all to make it to the heavenly moon empire, this was extremely valuable time to Jianchen. The Divine King was still engaged in an intense battle against Huayan in outer space. Sword chi crisscrossed the space with surprising sword intent. Each strand of sword chi was blinding, shooting off like galaxies with devastating power. The Divine King was still engaged in an intense battle against Huayan in outer space. Sword chi crisscrossed the space with surprising sword intent. Each strand of sword chi was blinding, shooting off like galaxies with devastating power. The Divine King was a primordial realm expert, and his laws of the sword had reached sword immortal. Sword chi permeated his surroundings, revolving around him like countless illusionary swords. Right now, he seemed like an immortal of the sword. It was like he possesses a certain ethereal lightness. On the other side, Huayan churned with demonic aura. His laws of darkness swallowed all light, causing the celestial bodies to dim. It clashed time and time again with the Divine King's laws of the sword. The two of them seemed to be locked in an extremely intense battle, but they did not try to claim each other's lives in reality. However, even with that being the case, the battle was still devastating. It caused space to distort and turned it into a mess. They kept each other busy so that neither of them would have the energy to worry about Jianchen. The Divine King had already reached the limits of what he could do. He was no longer able to do anything about the three God Kings who chased Jianchen. Right now, the heritage of the Divine Kingdom of Pingtian was simply far too shallow. Even though they possessed a primordial realm expert, they only possessed a single God King, the Grand Imperial Protector. Moreover, the Grand Imperial Protector was only an early God King. He was completely useless to the dangers that Jianchen faced. Through the teleportation formation, Jianchen had successfully arrived in the Heavenly Moon Empire now. After destroying the teleportation formation in the Heavenly Moon Empire, he and Kaya shot towards the imperial capital with lightning speed. Along the way, Jianchen swallowed a few more healing pills. Coupled with the regeneration of his chaotic body, he recovered as quickly as possible. Kaya also wolfed down pills to heal as she fled as quickly as she could with Jianchen. Jianchen, where are we going next? Kaya asked. After coming to the Saints' world, this was the first time she had left the Dong'an province. Moreover, 3 experts were hunting her down, so she completely had no idea because she was unfamiliar with the Saints' world. After some thought, Jianchen replied, "The Empyrean demon cult has their eyes on us now. We definitely can't return to the Tianyuan clan, so we can only flee to further places so that we can completely shake them off. Our greatest enemy is not the 3 God Kings, but one of the 3 vice leaders of the Empyrean demon cult, Huayan. Although Huayan is busy with the Divine King, that won't last for too long. As a result, we need to find a way to escape from Huayan." With that, the light in Jianchen's eyes flickered. He furrowed his brows in thought for a while before making up his mind. He said, "Let's go to the Blood Sun Empire." Before long, Jianchen and Kaya arrived in the imperial capital of the Heavenly Moon Empire. Without even spending a second longer there than necessary, they paid quite a hefty price and were teleported away to the Blood Sun Empire. The Blood Sun Empire was the ruler of the southern region. Their status was supreme, and their authority in the southern region was equivalent to the Shi Empire's authority in the northern region. They were the ultimate existence. Currently, Huayan targeted Jianchen, so if there were any places that a primordial realm expert like Huayan would fear, there would only be the eternal Blood Sun Empire. At the same time, in the imperial palace of the Shi Empire, a beautiful but troubled woman who seemed to be in her 20s sat within a pavilion in the imperial gardens. She stared at the embroidered box she had placed on the stone table there and sighed constantly. This woman was Princess Tian of the Shi Empire. "Sigh, it has already been so long, and I've yet to complete Jianchen's request. What do I do?" Princess Tian murmured. She stared at the box on the table remotely as worry filled her face. "It's all my fault. I didn't think too much of it when I agreed to Jianchen's request. I thought it would be a piece of cake, where I could complete it easily. I never thought it would actually be so difficult now that I've tried it. I probably can't even take out the box in front of Aunt with her temperament, while I've never found a chance to give it to Uncle." The princess supported her chin with her hands as she sat in the garden, sighing powerlessly. Now, the box had basically become something that burdened her heart. After all, she had agreed to Jian Chen's request in the past. If she did not give the box to the Empress or the Emperor, she would not be able to find any ease. Sister Tian, what are you doing here all by yourself? And why are you staring at this box in a daze? What's in the box? At this moment, a rather mischievous giggle rang out from behind the princess. An eccentric girl who seemed to be 15 or 16 years in age stood behind Princess Tian in imperial robes. She smiled faintly, and her bright eyes moved about, filled with energy and mischief. Then, she arrived on the other side of the stone table in a flash and picked up the box. She giggled. Sister Tian, is the item in here a gift for Bing? Binger is rather eager to see what it is. As she said that, the girl called Binger opened the box without any hesitation at all. Binger, do not. That belongs to someone else, Princess Tian spoke out, but she was already too late to stop her. Binger had already opened the box. There were no priceless treasures within the box. It only held an extremely simple jade pendant. Binger was surprised as she looked at the object in the box. Her curiosity instantly turned into great disappointment. She picked up the jade pendant and glanced at it very casually before pouting. What is this? Why is such a simple jade pendant stored in such a great box? So much for getting me to think that it was something good. Binger, don't you know how to behave? Princess Tian frowned and lectured Binger unhappily. Even though she was stern, there was a sliver of adoration for Binger in her eyes. As she said that, Princess Tian snatched the jade pendant from Binger's hand. She could not help but study it herself. She had always been extremely curious about what the box held as well. After all, Jian Chen had stressed that it was a gift she had to give to the Empress or the Emperor personally. Evidently, the item inside would be extremely important. However, when Princess Tian looked at the jade pendant in her hand, she felt extremely doubtful and confused. She could tell that the jade pendant was nothing precious. It was made from extremely simple materials, and it would not raise any attention if it was just laid down somewhere in the imperial palace. The only thing that did catch some attention was the extremely exquisite and beautiful patterning on the jade pendant. However, the two words, Xiu, carved on there perplexed the princess slightly. So this is the item that Jian Chen needed me to give to uncle or aunt personally? Princess Tian became covered in cold sweat from shock. At that moment, she felt extremely fortunate that Binger had opened the box, allowing her to know what it held. Otherwise, it would have been humiliating if she had really given such a simple jade pendant to her aunt or uncle. Even if her aunt or uncle did not take offense, she would be completely embarrassed. Sienna! At this moment, a somewhat dignified voice rang out. The graceful empress appeared within the imperial gardens and slowly made her way towards Princess Tian. Princess Tian was taken aback. She turned around to glance at the empress who slowly made her way over before she thought about the opened box on the stone table. Immediately, she felt rather flustered. However, she seemed to fail to realize that the jade pendant from the box was still in her hand. Binger greets the empress. The girl called Binger stopped acting mischievously and bowed towards the empress politely. Before the empress, she was unable to behave as naturally as Princess Tian. She was extremely nervous. The empress looked at Princess Tian gently. Just when she was about to say something, she suddenly saw the jade pendant in the princess' hand. The empress abruptly quivered, and her face changed all of a sudden as well. Her beautiful, phoenix-like eyes seemed to freeze up as they became fixed on the jade pendant in Princess Tian's hands. In the next moment, the empress moved slightly and appeared before Princess Tian like she had teleported. Before the princess could return to her senses, the empress had grabbed the jade pendant from the princess' hand and studied it carefully. In the next moment, the empress moved slightly and appeared before Princess Tian like she had teleported. Before the princess could return to her senses, the empress had grabbed the jade pendant from the princess' hand and studied it carefully. Even though the pendant was made from something extremely simple, the exquisite carvings on it made the empress' cold heart beat heavily. In particular, when she saw the two words, Shiyu, engraved on the pendant, her hand that held it began to shake involuntarily. She could not be more familiar with the pendant. As a matter of fact, the appearance of the pendant, the exquisite carvings and the engraved words, had already formed a brand that was stamped deeply into her soul. She would never forget it in her life. This was because when she and Shi Ziyun had been hunted down by enemies and were forced to abandon their daughter, they had left a jade pendant exactly like this one with her. They did this so that they would be able to identify her in the future. Even though the material was different, everything else was the same as the pendant she had left behind in the past. It was exactly the same. Sienna, where did you get this jade pendant? Tears shone in the Empress' eyes as her trembling voice was filled with urgency. There was raw excitement in there that anyone could detect. In that moment, the Empress' immovable heart seemed to explode like a volcano. Her feelings churned violently as she struggled to remain calm. For all these years, she and the Shi Emperor had been deeply concerned, basically thinking about their daughter at all times. They had even sent people to search for her secretly during these 2 millennia, but they received no news at all. As time went on, their missing daughter basically turned into anxiety for the couple, making them experience eternal pain. This was because they had failed to find any leads in these 2,000 years. In a brutal world where power was everything, the 2 of them had no idea whether their daughter was still alive or not. However, now that the Empress, who had almost become despaired, suddenly saw a jade pendant similar to the one she had left with her daughter, the flames of hope were reignited. She had suddenly found a lead regarding the daughter she had lost for 2,000 years. This great surprise left the Empress overjoyed. Princess Tian stared at her emotional aunt in a daze. She felt very confused. She simply could not understand how a simple jade pendant could make her cold aunt react with such intensity. As for Binger, she had become completely stunned. She stared at the Empress blankly as shock filled her face. In that moment, she even began to suspect that the Empress she saw was an imposter. This was because in her memory, the Empress was cold and proud, making her unapproachable. She would treat everyone icily, and she would only be amiable when she saw Sister Tian. Yet now, she actually saw tears in the Empress' eyes and joy on the Empress' face. This was very unbelievable for Binger. Even though Princess Tian was very confused, she still asked, "Aunt, do you remember the Supreme Overgod I mentioned to you before? That Supreme Overgod gave me the box, and he got me to deliver it to you or Uncle personally. The jade pendant was the only thing in the box." What? The jade pendant was actually the item in the box? Regret filled the Empress' face. Naturally, she could remember the matter with the box. Originally, she did not care about the gift of an overgod at all, but she had never thought that the item inside would connect her to the daughter she had lost over 2,000 years ago. "No, I have to tell Ziyun something this important." The Empress vanished, leaving behind the confused Princess Tian and Binger standing in the garden. In a majestic courtroom, the Shi Emperor in dragon robes currently sat on the Emperor's throne as he managed the affairs of the empire. Below him stood many subjects and officials. They all showed respect. Ziyun. At this moment, the Empress' voice rang out. She held the jade pendant in her hand as she shot over as a blur, attracting the attention of all the officials. "Xianer, why are you so flustered?" The Shi Emperor looked at the Empress in confusion from his throne. "Ziyun, look." The Empress directly passed the pendant to the Emperor after arriving before him. When the Shi Emperor saw the jade pendant, his eyes suddenly narrowed. He shot up from his throne as his terrifying presence erupted from his body without control. Like a turbulent wave, it wreaked havoc in the courtroom, forcing back all the officials and subjects. "Where did this jade pendant come from?" the Shi Emperor asked in both an excited and trembling voice. He was the mighty Shi Emperor, yet he struggled to control his emotions at this moment. The Empress explained the origins of the jade pendant in a few short sentences. Let's go see Sienna." After learning where the jade pendant came from, the Shi Emperor was even more hurried than the Empress. He did not even bother to conclude the meeting of officials and directly disappeared from the courtroom with the Empress, leaving behind the officials to look at one another. Princess Tian and Binger remained stunned in the imperial gardens. Clearly, they still had not returned to their senses. At this moment, there was a flash, and the dignified Shi Emperor and the Empress appeared beside Princess Tian like they had teleported. "Xiener, where is the Jianqin who gave you the jade pendant?" the Shi Emperor asked directly. His face was filled with a sense of urgency. "Ah, uncle." Only now did the princess return to her senses. She looked at the Shi Emperor that had suddenly appeared before her and was stunned once again. However, she responded very quickly, "Uncle, Aunt, when Jianqin gave me the jade talisman, he was still in the Xiandao Empire. I am uncertain as to where he is right now. Let's go. To the Xiandao Empire." The Shi Emperor moved swiftly, immediately leaving the Shi Empire with Princess Tian and the Empress to go to the Xiandao Empire. The Shi Emperor's group was naturally fairly impressive since he was leaving the empire. 2 primordial realm subjects followed him along. After finding a lead on his daughter, the Shi Emperor was clearly nervous from worry. He had gone as far as to move personally, using his supreme cultivation as a chaotic prime to hurry everyone along. He basically tread through worlds, where they would flash past with each step. In just 5 or 6 steps, he had covered a tremendous distance and directly arrived above the imperial capital of the Xiandao Empire. The personal arrival of the Shi Emperor shocked the entire Xiandao Empire. All the primordial realm experts in the empire emerged from seclusion, welcoming him politely. Aside from Tian Shuang, there were 2 ruddy old men among the primordial realm experts of the Xiandao Empire. They currently bowed towards the Shi Emperor as they felt uneasy inside. In the past few years, the Shi Emperor had made a name for himself from all the killing he did, so the Shi Emperor's arrival had unsettled the 3 primordial realm experts. They all recalled the past to see whether they had actually taken part in the hunt or not. "Is Jianqin in your Xiandao Empire?" However, to the 3 primordial realm experts' surprise, the Shi Emperor asked for a person called Jianqin right from the start. The 2 ruddy old men became doubtful when they heard the name. A gleam of light flickered through Tian Shuang's eyes, and she said after some thought, "Shi Emperor, Jianqin has already left our Xiandao Empire. If I recall correctly, he should be in a place called the Divine Kingdom of Pingtian in the southern region." The southern region, the Divine Kingdom of Pingtian, the Shi Emperor murmured before clasping his hands at Tian Shuang in gratitude. Immediately, he set off for the southern region with everyone. The Shi Emperor did not take a teleportation formation. With his cultivation as a chaotic prime, he would even be faster than a teleportation formation if he moved through the cloud plane by himself. Several figures flew through the sky with lightning speed above the Dong'an province of the Divine Kingdom of Pingtian, directly flying into the provincial city and stopping above the Tian Yuan clan. The person at the front seemed to be in his 40s. He wore violet and gold robes, and he seemed rather dignified. He looked at the Tian Yuan clan from above coldly. This middle-aged man was the 9th prince of the Eternal Blood Sun Empire. According to the information the ancestor of the Earth Spirit sect provided, he had directly come to the Tian Yuan clan. 9th prince, the Tian Yuan clan is only a small clan. Are they really connected to the loss of the Flower of Ways? A god king asked carefully from behind the 9th prince. The 9th prince hovered in the air and stared at the Tian Yuan clan emotionlessly. He said, "The person from the Earth Spirit sect told me anonymously through the jade slip that several decades ago, Jianqin assisted the soul of a primordial realm expert to obtain a few things Duanmu left behind in his dwelling, which also allowed her to recover her body. At that time, the primordial realm expert was only an overgod after recovering her body. And recently, Jianqin caught the eyes of the commander of the 7th Army from the Empyrean demon cult, Yashi Lian. A primordial realm expert saved him in the end, and even Yashi Lian was captured. It's extremely likely that this primordial realm expert is the one who had recovered her body under Jianqin's help in God King Duanmu's dwelling." The 9th prince stood with his arms crossed and said slowly, "Even if a soul that has newly forged a body was once a primordial realm expert, it's impossible for them to recover so rapidly unless they use extremely precious heavenly resources. The Flower of Ways just happens to be an extremely precious heavenly resource. As a result, I can basically conclude that the person who stole the Flower of Ways is the primordial realm expert behind Jianqin." With that, The ninth prince's face darkened and killing intent appeared in his eyes. He had already realized that the flower of ways had probably already been ingested, but he needed to make someone pay. This was because without the flower of ways, it would take him forever to reach the primordial realm. Even with his extraordinary talent, overcoming the bottleneck between godhood and the primordial realm was still difficult. The ninth prince became more furious the more he thought about it. In the end, it transformed into raging killing intent, and he directly hurled a punch at the Tianyuan clan. Boom! The entire provincial city rumbled loudly, and the God King level formation that had been recently cast down over the Tianyuan clan completely collapsed from the ninth prince's punch. The formation was only enough to stop attacks from early God Kings, while the ninth prince had already reached the peak of God King. He was preparing to break through to the primordial realm. It was impossible for the formation to stop him. With the destruction of the formation, the Tianyuan clan was clearly exposed. With the destruction of the formation, the Tianyuan clan was clearly exposed. However, the Tianyuan clan was no longer in perfect condition. The ninth prince's attack was simply too powerful. Not only did it destroy the formation, but the powerful shockwaves of energy had also destroyed a third of the clan. It was a mess as far as the eye could see. If it were not for the protective formation that blocked most of the ninth prince's attack, probably the entire Tianyuan clan would have been devastated by the ninth prince. However, even with that being the case, many of the weaker servants and guards in the Tianyuan clan were affected by the shockwave and became heavily injured. The sudden occurrence had thrown the entire Tianyuan clan into a mess. Many people ran about frantically. They all paled when they saw how the God King level formation had already collapsed. Shiyu, Mo Ling, Ando Fu, and the other elders currently gathered together as they stared at the sky sternly. Even Sacred Feather, Rui Jin, Hong Lian, Hei Yu, and the people from the world of Forsaken Saints emerged from the Forbidden Grounds. Seeing the ruined formations in the surroundings, they became extremely grim. They all knew that the protective formation around the Tianyuan clan was at the level of God Kings. There was both a trapping and killing formation there, so in the divine kingdom of Pingtian, it could be regarded as extremely powerful. Yet, when they saw the tough formation shatter without any prior signs, they realized just how powerful the offender was. May I ask how our Tianyuan clan has offended the seniors, where the seniors have to shatter our protective formation? Shiyu said coldly from the Tianyuan clan as she stared at the ninth prince's group. Sacred Feather arrived beside Shiyu as well. He stared at the people in the sky emotionlessly as a vicious light shone through his sharp gaze. The other elders of the Tianyuan clan stood behind Shiyu and Sacred Feather. They were the only two overgods left in the Tianyuan clan now. The face of a god king behind the ninth prince immediately sank when he heard Shiyu's cold questioning. He called out, "How dare you? Do you know who you're talking to? This is the ninth prince of the Blood Sun Empire. Why don't you kneel in greeting now that the ninth prince is here?" The expressions of all the people in the Tianyuan clan changed when they heard that. They could not help but look at each other. Many of them felt doubtful. They had no idea when the Tianyuan clan had offended the ninth prince of the Blood Sun Empire. Shiyu's heart sank all of a sudden. The ninth prince had come with ill intentions, which made her feel that something bad was going to happen. Offending the Blood Sun Empire would result in consequences that were even worse than offending the Empyrean demon cult. The Blood Sun Empire was the ruler of the southern region, possessing a supreme status there. Before it, even the ancient empires with rich heritages like the Heavenly Moon Empire had to behave submissively. Which one of you is Patriarch Jianqin? The ninth prince asked with a sunken face. His voice was icy cold. Your Highness, very unfortunately, the Patriarch is not in the clan right now, Shiyu responded emotionlessly with a clasped fist. Not here. A vicious light flickered through the ninth prince's eyes. Just when he wanted to say something, his face changed suddenly, and his eyes instantly became filled with heavy, cold, killing intent. Raising his hand, terrifying energy gathered, instantly condensing into a huge hand that fell onto the forbidden grounds of the Tianyuan clan. Boom! The ground shook violently. The ninth prince had directly used his energy hand to wrench out a secret room hidden beneath the forbidden grounds. The tough room shattered in the ninth prince's hands. This room was where newbies cultivated in seclusion. With the secret room destroyed, newbies naturally fell out. At the same time, a golden-striped silver snake that was several thousand meters in length but only as thick as a wrist appeared as well. The golden-striped silver snake had lost all its presence of life, and most of its vital essence was gone as well. Consequently, it appeared to be slightly shriveled now. When the god kings who had come with the ninth prince saw the corpse of the snake, their faces all changed. Killing intent surged from all of them uncontrollably. No wonder we couldn't find Jean Mang's corpse in the Een Mountains of Seven's Despair. You've brought him here. The loss of the Flower of Ways is indeed related to your Tianyuan clan. The Tianyuan clan sure is bold to even eye the items of the ninth prince. Such crimes are so great that even destroying the entire clan won't be enough. The god kings behind the ninth prince all spoke out coldly as they gave off killing intent. They were tempted to destroy the Tianyuan clan instantly. As for the ninth prince, his face became extremely sunken when he stared at the corpse of the golden-striped silver snake. He had already become furious as killing intent built up inside. If he doubted Jianchen a little before, he was extremely confident about his guess now that he had seen the corpse of the snake. Newbies stood up from the ground in a disheveled manner. He was slightly confused, but soon afterwards he heard the furious shouts of the god kings, allowing him to understand what had happened. His face immediately became ugly. Suddenly, a terrifying pressure appeared. A god king behind the ninth prince arrived before newbies instantly and gripped his throat tightly. The light in the god king's eyes shone viciously as killing intent surged. He said frigidly, "How dare you absorb Jean Mang's essence? Jean Mang serves the ninth prince, yet you've treated his corpse like this. I will let you come begging to me for death." As he said that, the god king's hand clamped down. With a crisp crack, Newbie's neck was reduced to pieces. Even though Newbies had risen from being a god to early over-god after absorbing some of the essence from Jean Mang, he was still extremely puny before a god king. He was unable to put up any resistance at all. Afterwards, the god king grabbed the top of Newbie's head in an attempt to forcefully draw his soul from his body. Newbie's eyes dilated. He watched the god king's hand approach him as regret filled his eyes. He resisted with his full strength, but due to the huge difference in strength, it was a futile effort. Will I, the great Newbies, die just like this? No, I refuse. I refuse. I've only just come to the saint's world. I've yet to see all the scenery the saint's world has to offer. I still haven't reached the limit of my cultivation path. Newbies roared out inside. Before the threat of life and death, his instincts for survival stimulated all his potential. At that moment, the blood in his body flowed hundreds of times faster than usual. On his face, his arms, and every inch of his body, the blood vessels that were hidden underneath his skin bulged as a faint golden light flowed in there. At this moment, Newbies could clearly feel the power of his bloodline rapidly strengthen, making him feel like energy surged through his entire body. However, it was still not enough to change the situation. Even after his bloodline had strengthened and his battle prowess had increased, it was still not enough for him to escape from a god king. After all, he was only an early overgod right now. However, at that moment, Sacred Feather struck out. He instantly reverted to his original form, and a huge, white tiger hovered in the sky. It possessed 2 wings and was glorious. Extremely strong killing intent condensed on Sacred Feather, along with the force of slaughter. He raised his 2 wings high, and they fused into a blade. It slashed out with the killing intent from Sacred Feather. Extremely strong killing intent condensed on Sacred Feather, along with the force of slaughter. He raised his 2 wings high, and they fused into a blade. It slashed out with the killing intent from Sacred Feather. Sacred Feather struck out with his full strength against the God King. All his strength surged out without holding back anything. His presence was overwhelming. Even though he was only an early overgod, he was a Sacred Feather Tiger Emperor. His bloodline was extremely powerful. Coupled with the way of slaughter he had comprehended, his strike was extremely powerful. It had surpassed the amount of strength he should have been able to use right now. The God King who grabbed Nubis by the neck and was just about to wrench out his soul in a brutal method sneered disdainfully when he sensed Sacred Feather's attack. He scorned, "An ant dares to stand up against a tiger? Die." With that, the God King's hand that had originally reached towards Nubis' head suddenly extended towards Sacred Feather's wings. Sacred Feather had condensed all his power into his wings. The power of the ways of slaughter had been condensed there as well. However, when his full-powered attack came in contact with the God King's hand, it was gripped tightly. The power within was unable to harm his opponent at all. It's actually the ways of slaughter. Impressive, the laws you've comprehended are very powerful. Unfortunately, your cultivation is just too weak, the God King said coldly. He looked at Sacred Feather coldly, and his hand tremored. An energy that was devastating to overgods struck Sacred Feather mercilessly. A bloody mist spurted out from Sacred Feather's mouth as he was knocked away powerlessly. His wings constantly cracked as white feathers floated in the sky. Sacred Feather's wings collapsed powerlessly. Not only did they turn red from the blood, but even his body had been dyed red. A God King's strike was powerful. Although Sacred Feather's bloodline was powerful, it was unable to make up for the huge difference in strength between an overgod and a God King. Just a single attack had rendered him heavily injured. Sacred Feather! Rui Jin, Hong Lian, and He Yu all called out. They arrived before Sacred Feather with a single step. Worry filled their faces as they immediately fed healing pills to Sacred Feather. Has His Highness allowed you to save him? A God King behind the ninth prince said coldly. He gently closed his hand, and the space around the three of them immediately froze up. This God King had comprehended the laws of space. He could trap a whole region of space with a single thought. Rui Jin, Hong Lian, and He Yu were all immobilized. Before a God King who had comprehended the laws of space, they did not even have the power to blink. A pained grunt rang out. The God King who held Nubis by the neck had already pressed his right hand onto Nubis' head. His face was extremely vicious as he formed a claw with his fingers. They had already dug into Nubis' skin, slowly penetrating his skull. Blood that shone with golden light flowed from the top of Nubis' head, dripping down his face. The God King's hand slowly approached Nubis' soul. Even though Nubis' bloodline had evolved and strengthened through his great unwillingness to die, it could only become as powerful as the bloodline of Sacred Feather Tiger Emperors at most. Even Sacred Feather was unable to withstand a single attack from a God King, let alone him. Even though the people in the Tianyuan clan were furious when they saw Nubis' situation, they really did not have anything that they could use to fend off a God King. At that moment, helplessness filled all of them. This made Shiyu absolutely furious. Rage filled her inside. Just as the God King was about to touch Nubis' soul, resolution suddenly appeared in her eyes. She ignored her personal safety and struck out fearlessly with determination. Jian Chen had granted her a fortune out of kindness. Now that the Tianyuan clan faced a disaster and the life of Jian Chen's friend, Nubis, was in danger, she could not just stand by and watch this tragedy unfold as if she was unconcerned about the matter. Shiyu wielded a sword that shone beautifully. She fused with it and slashed at the arm of the God King. The Tianyuan clan sure has quite a few people who overestimate themselves, the God King who held Nubis sneered. He turned around to look at Shiyu and blew out a mouthful of air. With that, a huge gale immediately appeared. Terrifying energy surged out from the God King's mouth, striking Shiyu with terrifying might. Shiyu came to a halt, but that was not all. Before the storm of energy, she could not help but retreat. Tell me, where is Jian Chen? If you don't, I'll kill the four of them first, the God King who controlled the laws of space said coldly. As his hand gradually tightened, the space around Rui Jin and the others creaked audibly. Under the God King's control, the space there had visibly compressed. Rui Jin, Hong Lian, and He Yu, who were trapped in the space there, were compressed as well. Their clothes pressed tightly against their bodies as they resisted the compression. The pressure from all directions had made their bodies shrink visibly. Under the tremendous pressure, blood oozed from the pores of their bodies, dyeing their clothes red. If this continued, the three of them would burst to death. However, the three of them were unable to do anything about it. No, it shouldn't just be the four of them. It should include these people as well, the God King who controlled the laws of space said inattentively. He gently extended a hand towards the upper echelon of the Tianyuan clan. Instantly, the space behind Shiyu froze as well. All the important members of the Tianyuan clan had been trapped in space. Among them included the ancestor of the previous Mo clan, Mo Ling, Shiyu's foster father, and even Mo Yen. The entire Tianyuan clan had become speechless. The arrival of the ninth prince and his people were like the shade of death, looming over the clan. Arg! Shiyu's body trembled at this sight. Suddenly, she bellowed out, and flames expanded from her body. The flames did not give off any heat, but with the appearance of them, her presence actually skyrocketed. It surpassed early Overgod very soon and reached a higher level. However, even though Shiyu's presence rose, and she had become stronger, her vitality weakened at a visible rate. Her long, black hair paled rapidly, becoming gray, and then snow-white. The situation of the Tianyuan clan had stimulated Shiyu greatly, to the point where she would even go as far as to burn her own life and soul for greater strength. Currently, flames burned around Shiyu as her snow-white hair danced. She gave off an extremely terrifying presence. Chapter 1978, The Shi Emperor's Daughter, 1. Shiyu looked at the ninth prince with unconcealable rage and resentment. The ninth prince had brought on all of the disasters that the Tianyuan clan faced today. Ninth prince, I want to kill you. Shiyu roared out furiously. She fused with her sword and stabbed at the ninth prince as hard as she could with the power she had gained from burning her vitality. The sword shone, illuminated the entire city. The attack was like a comet through the sky, shining with great resplendence. It bore the color of life burning away as it moved out like it was unstoppable. It possessed Shiyu's determination to kill. Seeing how Shiyu attacked the ninth prince, the god kings who had come with the ninth prince were all slightly stunned before revealing strange smiles. Scorn and disdain filled their smiles. The ninth prince was not like those wastrels from other large organizations, who only relied on their statuses to have their way, while their own strength was weak. He was not the type to put on a strong front to hide his weakness. In reality, the ninth prince was the most powerful and most terrifying person among them. He had reached the peak of God King and was already making preparations for his breakthrough to the primordial realm. Before an expert like that, even if a God King burned their life and soul, they would not be able to injure him, let alone a puny overgod. The ninth prince looked at Shiyu coldly as if he was a great lord looking at an ant. He did not make any unnecessary actions in response to the strike that Shiyu had put her life into. He only waved his hand gently like it was nothing, remaining composed. Immediately, the surroundings changed. The ninth prince's seemingly unserious movement possessed overwhelming power. At that moment, he was like the ruler of the world, where he could destroy the entire place with a simple raise of his hand. Before Shiyu could even approach the ninth prince, she sensed an irresistible force surge over. Before it, she felt like she was a tiny boat in the great ocean, so insignificant and fragile. The sword in Shiyu's hand directly shattered when it came in contact with the force from the ninth prince. It turned into countless shards as a terrifying force passed through her arm, ramming into her body heavily. Spurt! Shiyu puked out a mouthful of blood and organs that sprayed into the sky. It dyed the entire place red. Shiyu was blown away like a broken kite. As she was knocked back, her right hand that held her sword had already turned into a bloody mess, where even her bones had turned to dust. Afterwards, her entire right arm actually fell apart rapidly in the air. It vanished bit by bit. A short while later, Shiyu's right arm had completely vanished, only leaving a bloody pile behind. She was knocked very far away. She only struck the ground heavily after slamming into the spatial barrier that trapped the important members of the Tianyuan clan. Blood constantly spurted from her mouth. Her presence completely dipped at that moment. It withered away. She was now at death's door. Behind her, the hair on Shiyu's foster father, Mo Xingfeng, had already become snow white. He stared at Shi Yu, who had collapsed on the ground, as his eyes were completely bloodshot. They were filled with grief. Although Shi Yu was not his true daughter, he had still raised her from a young age after all. They were so close that they were like true father and daughter. However, the God King who used the laws of space had completely trapped him there, utterly immobilized. There was nothing he could do at this moment. A pained voice rang out, and Newbie's skull had already been punctured. The God King had forcefully extracted his soul. At the same time, the spatial compression around Rui Jin, Hong Lian, and He Yu had already reached their limits. They bled from all their facial orifices while the bones across their bodies cracked audibly. Only Sacred Feather continued to endure the pressure painfully. The three of them gritted their teeth and endured with their great willpower. They used all their strength to summon the origin energy armor they had brought up from the lower world. However, it was still useless. The armor instantly became covered with cracks under the compression of space before shattering into pieces. The ninth prince watched this happen coldly. He said, "I'll give you 3 seconds. Contact your patriarch and tell him to return, or tell me who the primordial realm expert behind Jianqin is and where she is. I can give you a quick death if you do that." Or, the ninth prince glanced across the people of the Tianyuan clan coldly, and he said with killing intent, "I'll make you come begging for death." Shi Yu raised her head and stared at the ninth prince in resentment. She said weakly, "If you want to kill us, then kill us. We will never contact the patriarch. However, I can guarantee you that if you destroy our Tianyuan clan, our patriarch will destroy your entire empire in revenge in the future." Shi Yu spoke stubbornly, choosing to die rather than to yield. The ninth prince's gaze turned cold. He extended a hand and brought Shi Yu over. He gripped her neck as he held her in the air and said, "You sure have some pride. However, there are always times where the prouder a person is, the more miserable their outcome is." The ninth prince glanced behind him and said, "Mo Yen, aren't you the most skilled in methods of harvesting yin to replenish your yang? I'll grant this woman to you right now. Treat her well." With that, the ninth prince directly tossed Shi Yu over. Behind the ninth prince, there were still 2 other god kings who did not take part in the battle. When they saw the ninth prince toss Shi Yu over, a nefarious light immediately flickered through the eyes of one of them. He picked up Shi Yu with his arms and he snickered, "Your Highness is wise. To kill such a beautiful woman would be quite a pity. I'll follow your Highness' orders and treat this woman well." Don't you dare." Shi Yu's face changed when she heard their conversation. Determination filled her eyes as she wanted to blow herself up. However, Mo Yen only pointed at Shi Yu gently and sealed up all her cultivation, severing her thoughts of blowing herself up. Then he sniggered, "Little beauty, you can't die so soon. You've cultivated for all these years, but you must not have enjoyed the feeling of being loved by a man, right? But don't worry, it'll happen very soon. You'll understand the joys of being loved by a man. You'll never forget the lovely feeling." Ha! With that, Mo Yen began to gently strip away Shi Yu's bloodied clothes before everyone. He did not move quickly. Instead, it was extremely slow. The nefarious light in his eyes shone brighter and brighter. This sight utterly enraged all the people of the Tianyuan clan. However, they were all powerless against the ninth prince and his god kings. They could not even protect themselves. However, the space 1,000 meters above the Tianyuan clan suddenly rippled like water. With the rippling, a few people appeared in the empty space. Chapter 1979. The Shi Emperor's Daughter, 2. At the very front of the group was a middle-aged man. He wore dragon robes while his resolute face gave off an undeniable sense of dignity. Even though his presence was completely concealed, he seemed to be treading on top of the world as he appeared. Behind the middle-aged man were 2 women. One seemed to be in her 30s. She was graceful and charming, and she also possessed a sense of dignity. However, worry and excitement filled her face. The other woman only seemed to be in her 20s. She was beautiful and gave off a noble presence as if she led a luxurious life. People could tell that she possessed an extraordinary birth with just a single glance. Behind them were two ruddy old men. They concealed their presences such that no one was able to sense their existence, much less see through their cultivation. The group consisted of the Shi Emperor and the others who had hurried over a tremendous distance from the northern region. As soon as they arrived in the air above the Tian Yuan clan, the Shi Emperor and the Empress looked down. Although many people had gathered in the Tian Yuan clan today, both of them were primordial realm experts, and the Shi Emperor had even reached chaotic prime. As a result, as soon as they arrived, there was a calling of their bloodline that clearly appeared in their hearts. The couple's feelings surged from the calling, and following it, their eyes locked onto Shiyu. However, when they saw what was happening, the couple became utterly enraged. Their eyes became extremely bloodshot at that moment, and killing intent erupted like a tsunami. The world darkened as the sun in the sky trembled. Suddenly, the temperature of the entire divine kingdom of Pingtian plummeted. The divine king and the vice leader of the Empyrean demon cult remained engaged in an extremely intense battle in outer space. However, when they sensed the terrifying killing intent that frightened even them, they could not help but stop and look towards the Dong'an province. Chaotic Prime! The divine king and Huayan both cried out. They became stern. A chaotic prime had appeared in the southern region and in the Dong'an province of the divine kingdom of Pingtian in particular. The divine king was unable to remain calm about this, so he immediately rushed back to the divine kingdom of Pingtian. He no longer bothered about keeping Huayan busy. On the tallest peak of the 3,000 spiritual mountains within the Earth Spirit sect, the eyes of the ancestor, Sang Tu, suddenly snapped open. Surprise filled his face as he looked in the direction of the divine kingdom of Pingtian grimly. What a powerful killing intent! This killing intent originates from a chaotic prime. Is it that woman? Sang Tu became extremely stern. Now that a chaotic prime had suddenly appeared in the divine kingdom of Pingtian, he subconsciously connected it to the woman in white clothes who had infiltrated his secret room silently. No, it's not her. The presences differ too much. Just which expert has come to the divine kingdom of Pingtian, and why is his killing intent so strong? Sang Tu could no longer remain where he was. Immediately, he hurried off to the divine kingdom of Pingtian. At the same time, this matter also alarmed the primordial realm experts of the imperial family of the Heavenly Moon Empire and the Taoist sect of Calm Clouds that stood equal to the Earth Spirit sect. They all emerged from seclusion and hurried off to the divine kingdom of Pingtian. A chaotic prime had appeared in the divine kingdom of Pingtian. This was a significant matter, so they had to investigate. The killing intent that had suddenly appeared in the Tian Yuan clan also made the ninth prince's face change drastically. Suddenly, he looked at the sky as disbelief filled his face. He felt his soul tremble before the killing intent. The killing intent was so powerful that it was enough to annihilate the surroundings. It made the ninth prince feel like his soul had frozen over. Since even a peak god king like the ninth prince experienced that, what happened to the god kings who had come with the ninth prince was obvious. Fright filled all of their faces. Mo Yen stopped stripping Shiyu's clothes. As if a cold bucket of water had been poured over him, his nefarious flames were completely extinguished. You are... The Shi Emperor and the Empress both cried out sorrowfully. The Shi Emperor directly sent out a palm strike that contained terrifying energy towards Mo Yen. A chaotic prime strike created just too great of a disturbance. It was world-shaking. The Shi Emperor's furious strike directly annihilated space, creating black spatial cracks in the sky that spread towards Mo Yen at a speed greater than lightning. From the distance, a black crack seemed to stretch towards the ground. It was like a black streak of lightning. The ninth prince and the other god kings felt like they were suffocating at that moment. Their hearts throbbed heavily as all the hairs on their bodies stood up. They felt a chill run down their spines, from their heads to their feet. Chaotic prime. The ninth prince lost his composure. His face changed drastically, and he immediately pressed his hand onto his space ring. A jade talisman laid quietly in a corner of his space ring. It had been crushed to dust silently at that moment. Mo Yen had been silently reduced to nothingness. He disappeared from the air, and not even a single dust particle remained. Only the shattered space that slowly closed up remained where he stood before. A mighty god king had just vanished before everyone like that. Had he been reduced to the simplest particles from the Shi Emperor's strike, or had the crack in space sucked him away? However, it was certain that even if Mo Yen was a god king, it was impossible for him to survive a furious strike from a chaotic prime that also contained killing intent. The Shi Emperor's control over his power was extremely great. His furious attack only targeted Mo Yen such that no energy surged out. As a result, his attack resulted in no energy shockwaves, and it also failed to reach anyone in the surroundings. Not even the surroundings were damaged. However, the pressure and terrifying disturbance the attack caused mentally shocked everyone present. You are. The Shi Emperor silently appeared before Shiyu. His stalwart body trembled uncontrollably as tears filled his eyes. He called out emotionally, My daughter, mother has finally found you. Mother has finally found you." The Empress ignored the blood on Shiyu and embraced her tightly. She began to sob as tears flowed from her eyes uncontrollably like a fountain. She was unable to stop crying. She had just found her beloved daughter that had been lost for many years. It should have been something delightful, but when she saw her own flesh and blood end up in such a miserable state, her heart shattered. When she thought about how her own daughter would be completely doomed if she arrived just a little later, the Empress became filled with angst. "Who did this? Who injured my daughter like this?" The Empress said through gritted teeth, emphasizing every single word. Fury filled her eyes, and just a single, terrifying glance from them was enough to make people shiver. Chapter 1980, The Shi Emperor's Daughter, 3. The Shi Emperor also surged with killing intent. His face became extremely sunken as he gently placed his hand on Shiyu's shoulder. Tremendous vitality parted from his body, entering Shiyu's body in an extremely gentle way. With the channeling of the vitality, Shiyu, who had been at death's door, regained life in a short instance. Some color appeared in her dull eyes while her wounds quickly healed as well. Even her right arm that had been destroyed began to regrow. The severed arm was healing. After all, this was the tremendous vitality of a chaotic prime. This vitality was nothing to a chaotic prime, but to Shiyu, who was only an overgod, this was a power that could change her fate. It basically gave her a second life. Princess Tian and the two old men who had followed along also descended onto the Tianyuan clan. At that moment, they stared at Shiyu in shock. Princess Tian looked at the bloodied Shiyu in the Empress' embrace. The feelings she experienced were extremely mixed. If she had known earlier that the box Jianchen had given her was a lead to her aunt's long-lost daughter, she would have forcefully given it to the Empress regardless of the consequences. "I can't believe Jianchen. Why didn't he directly explain such an important thing to me? If I could tell elder sister's whereabouts earlier, she would not end up like this." Princess Tian was very displeased with Jianchen. As for the two old men who had come with the Shi Emperor, they experienced shock and disbelief. In the Shi Empire, everyone already knew that the Shi Emperor had no children. This was a public fact. However, the Shi Emperor had suddenly gained a daughter now, which surprised the two of them very much. At this moment, the Divine King had arrived in the Tianyuan clan as well. He concealed his presence and maintained an extremely low profile, so low that barely anyone sensed his arrival. However, when he understood the situation, he knew how to behave and remained quiet. He watched on from one side, looking at the couple and the two old men sternly. He was nowhere near calm inside. He did not know who they were, but he did know that any single one of them possessed a cultivation level that greatly exceeded his own. The arrival of a chaotic prime had utterly terrified the God King, who could control space already. His face paled, and he was no longer in the mood to deal with the people from the Tianyuan clan. He immediately released the trapped space. The important members of the Tianyuan clan recovered their freedom, including Rui Jin, Hong Lian, and Heiyu. All of them felt like they had just escaped death. However, when they looked at Shiyu, who the Empress embraced, none of them said anything. They were also stunned. The original patriarch of the Mo clan, Mo Xingfeng, experienced extremely mixed feelings as he looked at the Emperor and the Empress. As for the ninth prince of the Blood Sun Empire, he had become unsettled. He studied the emperor and the empress carefully. However, his gaze was fixed on the dragon robes that the Shi emperor wore. Dragon robes and a chaotic prime. Is he? As a person who possessed authority in the Blood Sun Empire, the ninth prince was naturally knowledgeable. He completely exceeded the divine king in this aspect, so he quickly guessed the Shi emperor's identity, which caused his heart to sink. Impossible! Doesn't the Shi emperor of the northern region have no children? Why is there a daughter now? And the daughter is... The ninth prince's face became extremely ugly. The light in his eyes flickered with uncertainty. With his quick thoughts, he made a decision and began to back off silently. He wanted to leave without drawing any attention to himself. No one can leave before I properly investigate if there's anyone else involved in my daughter's wounds. However, just when the ninth prince moved, the empress' cold voice rang out, and pressure immediately fell on the ninth prince. The ninth prince's body sank. Under the tremendous pressure, his legs directly sank into the ground, leaving only his knees visible. Seeing how leaving silently would no longer work, the ninth prince could only raise his two hands with his full strength reluctantly now that he had run out of choices. He clasped his fist. I am the ninth prince of the Blood Sun Empire, and I greet the Shi emperor and the empress. It really is an honor for our southern region to have you personally visit. If there are any places I can help, I am more than willing to. The Shi emperor? Empress? The divine king was startled inside. The ninth prince's identity had already surprised him enough, but when the ninth prince mentioned the Shi emperor and the empress, he directly connected it to the eternal Shi empire of the northern region. The Shi emperor? Is the chaotic prime in dragon robes the current emperor of the eternal Shi empire of the north? Even with the divine king's composure, he struggled to remain calm at this moment. He looked at Shiyu, who laid in the empress' embrace, and was extremely shocked. However, after the Shi emperor and the empress learnt who the ninth prince was, they still did not budge. The empress stared at the ninth prince coldly and said, "Are you among the people who injured my daughter?" The empress' voice was filled with killing intent, such that people believed without any doubt that even if he was the ninth prince of the eternal Blood Sun Empire, she would still be bold enough to kill him. The ninth prince's face did not change. He clasped his fist. "You are mistaken, Empress. The emperor has already dealt with the person who injured your daughter. I am congratulating the emperor and the empress for your reunion with your daughter. Don't lie. The person who injured Shiyu and destroyed her arm was clearly you." Just when the ninth prince had finished speaking, Shiyu's foster father, Mo Xingfeng, said furiously from among the crowd, "Don't you tell dirty lies. If the Tianyuan clan dares to slander me any further, I can wipe out your entire clan with a single word with my authority. Even the divine kingdom of Pingtian won't be able to save you." The ninth prince's eyes turned cold, and he glared at Mo Xingfeng extremely sharply. The glance was like a sword, directly stabbing into Mo Xingfeng's soul, making him tremble violently and pale instantly. How imposing! The empress snorted coldly. She held Shiyu with one hand as she directly swung her other hand at the ninth prince. She condensed a hand of energy that slapped the ninth prince's face viciously, sending him flying. The slap was extraordinarily powerful. Half of the ninth prince's face had been reduced to a bloody mess while his entire jaw had been shattered. Blood covered his face. The ninth prince and his mighty cultivation of Peak God King only seemed like an infant before the empress. He was unable to resist at all. The souls of all the people from the Tianyuan clan were extremely shocked from that. Previously, they had used the power of their entire clan, yet they failed to resist at all before the ninth prince's people. They could only watch disaster descend. Yet now, the ninth prince and all his people, who were so powerful that they could easily destroy the entire Tianyuan clan in their eyes, was as weak as a child before the empress. All the people from the Tianyuan clan felt like they were dreaming when they witnessed this dramatic change in the situation. The empress knelt on the ground with one knee as she held Shiyu. Shiyu's blood had already dyed her clothes red. The empress stared at the ninth prince that she had sent flying with killing intent, and she said frigidly, "Is that true? Did Yuer's wounds really come from you?" Did you really destroy Yuer's arm? At that moment, Shiyu had finally recovered after receiving the tremendous vitality of a chaotic prime. Her missing arm had regrown as well. She struggled and escaped from the Empress' embrace before standing up. She stared at the Empress and the Emperor in confusion. The Empress immediately looked at Shiyu, and her glare softened instantly. A motherly light filled her eyes as she asked in concern, "Child, how do you feel?" "You, tell father who injured you. It doesn't matter who they are or what status they possess, I'll take revenge for you. I won't let any of them go." The Shi Emperor supported Shiyu carefully with one of his strong, robust arms. His eyes were gentle, and they were also filled with care. Shiyu gently broke free from the Shi Emperor's arm and looked at the Emperor and the Empress in confusion. She slowly staggered backwards as she said gently, "Who are you? I don't know you." When the Shi Emperor and the Empress heard Shiyu's last sentence, the plain voice had instead made the two primordial realm experts shudder inside. Evident sorrow filled their faces. When the Shi Emperor and the Empress heard Shiyu's last sentence, the plain voice had instead made the two primordial realm experts shudder inside. Evident sorrow filled their faces. The Shi Emperor was a vicious person who had created storms of blood and had personally killed half of the primordial realm experts in his empire. He was a cold-blooded emperor who even turned against his brothers. Yet, his face was filled with an indescribable bitterness right now. His arm remained extended in the posture where he supported Shiyu before. It seemed to be frozen there. His beloved daughter's previous words were like a needle, deeply piercing the Shi Emperor's heart with pain. Tears welled up in the eyes of the Shi Emperor. They seemed to roll down the cheeks of the Emperor famed for his cold-bloodedness uncontrollably. His stalwart body trembled slightly as he stared at Shiyu in utter pain. He opened his mouth slightly as if he wanted to explain something. However, when he saw the marks of blood on his daughter, he failed to say anything. "Child, I'm your mother, the mother who gave birth to you. This is your father connected to you by blood." The Empress broke out into tears. She charged over and embraced Shiyu tightly regardless of anything. She held her very tightly, where Shiyu was unable to break free at all. It was as if her daughter would vanish from her if she let go. At that moment, she was no longer the great Empress of the Shi Empire, nor was she a peak expert who had reached the primordial realm. She was only a mother with a fragile heart. By now, crowds had already formed around the Tianyuan clan. The primordial realm experts of the Heavenly Moon Empire had arrived as well. They stood with the Divine King, conversing secretly to ask about the situation here. However, the surroundings were extraordinarily quiet even though so many people had gathered around. They all watched on silently as they were in turmoil inside. The ninth prince who the Empress had sent flying did not dare to make any sounds at all. He looked at the Empress who sobbed while embracing Shiyu and the heartbroken Shi Emperor beside her. He felt bitter inside. He would have never thought that the overgod he randomly came across in the Tianyuan clan when he came looking for the person who had taken his flower of ways would actually be the princess of the Shi Empire of the North. Moreover, this princess had almost died to his hands. At this moment, the ninth prince experienced deep regret. He also felt extremely victimized. If he had known that Shiyu was the only daughter of the current emperor of the Shi Empire earlier, he would have never touched a hair on her even if he were 100 times bolder. Although the Blood Sun Empire was just like the Shi Empire, a ruler of an entire region, the current emperor of the Blood Sun Empire, the ninth prince's father, had many children. He was only one of the many children under the emperor. If the interests of the empire were truly threatened, his status as prince could be removed at any time. However, Shiyu was the only daughter of the Shi Emperor. Moreover, from the emotions the Shi Emperor and the Empress had shown, there was no doubt that they were willing to give up everything for their daughter. Shiyu was unable to break free from the Empress' embrace no matter what, so she just gave up. She allowed herself to be embraced like that. It was just that she clearly struggled to accept these people who had suddenly said they were her parents. She resisted instinctively. No, you're not my parents. I don't have parents. I only have a foster father." Shiyu shook her head gently. She spoke very softly, but tears welled up in her eyes. The Empress looked at Shiyu gently, and she used her right hand to wipe away the blood on Shiyu's face softly. The blood had already dyed the Empress' white, soft hands red. She said with a trembling voice, "Dumb child, don't say dumb things. When mother and father abandoned you, we had no other choice either. Mother knows you resent us, and mother also knows that you cannot forgive us. But since we've found you now, mother will use the rest of her life to properly make it up to you." The She-Emperor also walked over. He sighed gently, "It has been tough for you in the past few years. It's just like what your mother said. When we abandoned you in the past, it was all to protect you. I'll explain the exact reason later. Right now, tell father just who else has harassed you among the people here? I'll help you deal with them." The expressions of the ninth prince and his henchmen all changed when they heard the She-Emperor's words. Even though they were all god kings, they could not help but tremble inside. The ninth prince secretly panicked. He had already sent a message, but his father still had not come. He had no doubts that the She-Emperor would kill him without any hesitation if the Blood Sun Empire still did not send any people. He would not take his status into account at all. After all, the She-Emperor was famed for his viciousness and brutality. This time, Shiyu finally broke free from the Empress' embrace. When she thought about the current situation of the Tianyuan clan, Shiyu immediately jumped slightly. She stopped wondering if the people before her were her parents immediately and quickly looked around. "Newbies!" Suddenly, Shiyu cried out and arrived beside Newbies with a single step. Newbies currently laid on the ground with his eyes widened. The top of his skull had shattered, and his soul had been removed. Shiyu became furious. Fuming hatred filled her eyes, and she said painfully, "You've killed Newbies." Newbies was a close friend of Jianchen. Shiyu had no idea how sad Jianchen would become once he heard that Newbies was dead. The God King who had taken Newbies' soul immediately paled. He added in a hurry, "No, Your Highness, please don't jump to conclusions. He's not dead. His soul is here." The God King's attitude had undergone a complete reversal. Before he had even finished speaking, he took out Newbies' soul in a hurry. He passed it in front of Shiyu carefully as uneasiness filled his eyes. At that moment, his arms, and even his entire body shook gently. He was filled with fright. Newbies' soul was fine. Once he broke free, he immediately returned to his body. However, his body was severely injured, so he seemed extremely weak right now. Yenner. Suddenly, Mo Xingfeng's sorrowful voice rang out. Only when she heard her foster father's sorrowful calls did she remember that Mo Yen had been standing in the crowd before. Even deities would struggle to endure the compression of space, so Mo Yen with her Saint Emperor cultivation was. When she thought up to there, Shiyu's face became extremely pale in a single instance. She rushed past everyone as quickly as she could. However, when she arrived there, she could not find Mo Yen at all. All she saw was a heap of blood and flesh with ripped cloth scattered in between it. It was the clothes that Mo Yen liked to wear the most. Mo Xingfeng currently knelt before the pile of flesh and blood. He was grief-stricken. The sight roared through Shiyu's head like a bolt of lightning. It stunned her instantly, and she began to totter heavily, almost falling to the ground. She had already become extremely pale. Shiyu fell onto her bottom as she stared at the pile of indistinguishable blood and flesh. Her mind was about to collapse as tears flowed down her cheeks uncontrollably. Yenner, Shiyu murmured subconsciously. She could not help but think of the mischievous, energetic girl of the past. She was heartbroken. She and Mo Yen were so close that it was not something anyone else could understand. It could even be said that Mo Yen was the person closest to her in the world. She was even more attached to Mo Yen than her foster father, Mo Xingfeng. At this moment, the She-Emperor and the Empress made their way over. The She-Emperor glanced at the pile of flesh before squatting down beside Shiyu. He placed his hand on her shoulder and comforted her. Don't worry and don't feel sad. Father's here." The She-Emperor spoke very softly, but his voice was powerful and filled with deep confidence. It was like there were very few things in the world that he could not do or resolve. The She-Emperor spoke very softly, but his voice was powerful and filled with deep confidence. It was like there were very few things in the world that he could not do or resolve. The light in Shiyu's eyes immediately returned when she heard the She-Emperor's words as her mind almost collapsed. As if she had seen a sliver of light in the darkness, she looked at the striking, middle-aged man in dragon robes. She asked in a hurry, "Can you really save Yenner?" The She-Emperor looked at Shiyu and said, "Since the person called Yenner is so important to you, I'll make her appear before you again regardless of the price. As long as you can be happy, I will do anything for you." She-Emperor. When the two old men who had followed along heard the She-Emperor's words, they immediately became alarmed. They wanted to warn him. However, just when they were about to say something, the She-Emperor raised his hand to shut them up. The two old men looked at each other. The She-Emperor was the current emperor of the She Empire. A qualified emperor would never place too much importance on his personal affairs. He would work towards the interests of the empire for everything. He would even give up on his children at crucial times. However, the She-Emperor did not value the interests of the empire at all. Instead, he did everything for his daughter. He could even say that he would do anything for his daughter. As the person in charge of an eternal empire, they definitely could not say something like that. They could not even consider it. The silent divine king and the primordial realm experts of the heavenly moon empire nearby were experiencing internal turmoil. Some of them even looked at Shiyu in envy. In the lands of the Cloud Plain, would there still be any person bold enough to provoke the lady called Shiyu, seeing how she could get the emperor of an eternal empire, a chaotic prime, to make a promise like that? "Senior, can you really save Yenner?" Mo Xingfeng stared at the She-Emperor as he asked with a trembling voice. The She-Emperor nodded. Although her soul is gone, fortunately, she's not very powerful, and her soul hasn't completely dispersed either. It has been scattered in this space with some fragments remaining. All you need is a radiant God King who has condensed the 7 colored flowers to save her. And my empire just happens to have a radiant God King. With that, the She-Emperor formed a seal with his hand. He sent off an edict into the air, which flew towards the She Empire of the northern region. "Thank you for saving my daughter, Senior." "Thank you." Mo Xingfeng was overjoyed as he expressed his gratitude several times. Shiyu also let out a breath of relief now that Mo Yen could be revived. Afterwards, she looked at the 9th prince and his god kings. Fury immediately sprang up in her eyes, and she said through gritted teeth, "The disaster of the clan was all caused by them. All of them should die." The Empress looked at Shiyu and nodded lovingly. Then she looked at the 9th prince and his people, and her eyes immediately turned cold. With a flash, the Empress arrived before a god king who followed the 9th prince. She directly extended a slender finger towards him, sealing up all his cultivation instantly. Then she tossed him before Shiyu like he was a dead dog. From the start till the end, the God King did nothing. This was because the difference in strength was just far too great. Before the Empress, he was like an ant. I never thought the Empress' strength would be unfathomable as well. She's at the 6th heavenly layer at the very least. The Divine King and the primordial realm experts of the Heavenly Moon Empire all jumped inside when they saw the Empress move. The Empress continued, capturing all the other God Kings the 9th Prince had brought with him. She tossed them all before Shiyu. Even the 9th Prince of exalted status, known to be the most likely successor of the current emperor, was not spared. The Empress mercilessly sealed up his cultivation and tossed him before Shiyu. The 9th Prince's face became extremely ugly. He growled, "Your Majesty, I am a prince of the Blood Sun Empire. If you treat me like this, it'll affect the relationship between our Blood Sun Empire and your She Empire. You're too noisy." The Empress called out coldly and slapped the 9th Prince again, striking his other cheek. The slap sent the 9th Prince flying once again while his other cheek had become bloody as well. His face was no longer distinguishable. Moreover, the bottom half of his skull had shattered to pieces. However, the Empress treated it like it was nothing. She did not even glance at the 9th Prince after doing that. Instead, she turned around to look at Shiyu and said gently and caringly, These people can't resist anymore. Do you want Mother to avenge you, or do you want to deal with them yourself? Shiyu said nothing. She stared at the God Kings furiously as the arrogant, condescending scenes of the God Kings flashed through her head clearly. Killing intent immediately filled her eyes. She absolutely resented these God Kings. If it were not for the timely arrival of the Shi Emperor and the Empress, the entire Tianyuan clan would have probably been slaughtered. As a result, she wanted to deal with the God Kings personally. Shiyu brought her hands forwards and a strand of resplendent sword chi gradually appeared between her hands. She stabbed it towards one of them. Calm yourself, Shi Emperor. Please show mercy. At this moment, an ancient voice rang out in the sky. It was thunderous, and it rolled through the surroundings and lingered for a long time. Space distorted in the sky, and a few figures suddenly appeared. At the very front were two ruddy old men. They concealed their presences, so they seemed like ordinary people, making it completely impossible to see through their cultivation. However, as they stood there, the world around them seemed to pale and dull. Behind the two old men was a middle-aged man in dragon robes. He appeared to be dignified and seemed to be somewhat similar to the ninth prince. This was the Emperor of the Blood Sun Empire, known as the Blood Emperor by others. A few experts of the imperial family had come along as well, standing behind the Blood Emperor. At the same time, in the distant north, 3 ancient stone towers quietly stood in the forbidden grounds of the Shi Empire. The stone towers were not tall, but they seemed like they were connected with the world. Extremely powerful laws revolved around the surroundings of each stone tower. Haoshuan, Haoming, go visit the southern region. Our Shi Empire can't lose in terms of impression no matter what. At this moment, an ancient voice rang out from one of the stone towers. Ancestral Emperor, Ziyun's long-lost daughter. An ancient voice also rang out from another stone tower. She has been found, said the person in the first stone tower. Been found? Finally. During all these years, Ziyun has almost gone insane for his daughter. He is finally able to get this off his chest. The person in the second stone tower exhaled deeply as if he could finally relax. The situation is rather complicated. With Ziyun's temperament, he'll probably cause quite the trouble. The two of you need to go this time so our Shi Empire doesn't lose in terms of impression, but you also need to stop Ziyun from causing trouble that can't be dealt with. Go, the voice in the first stone tower rang out. Yes, Ancestral Emperor. The people in the other 2 towers responded. With that, the presences of the 2 stone towers suddenly changed, and the towers immediately became seemingly simple. The powerful laws that revolved around them had completely vanished. The towers were already empty. The ninth prince who the Empress had sent flying with a single slap finally stopped worrying when he saw the Blood Emperor and the 2 old men who stood in front of the Blood Emperor arrive on time. He rose up and flew behind the Blood Emperor as quickly as he could as if he had just been spared. The ninth prince who the Empress had sent flying with a single slap finally stopped worrying when he saw the Blood Emperor and the 2 old men who stood in front of the Blood Emperor arrive on time. He rose up and flew behind the Blood Emperor as quickly as he could as if he had just been spared. However, even though the reinforcements of the Blood Sun Empire had come, the ninth prince still seemed like he was fleeing for his life from how hurriedly he behaved. It was like the Shi Emperor or the Empress would stop him if he were slightly slower. Greetings to Father, to the 2 ancestral emperors. The ninth prince behaved extremely politely as he said all these words with great difficulty. After enduring 2 slaps from the Empress, his entire jaw had been destroyed, so his words were no longer audible. The Blood Emperor stood dignified. He glanced at the ninth prince emotionlessly without showing any care. Instead, he said in a sharp, deep voice, "Stand behind us." He spoke firmly and decisively. Yes. The ninth prince answered politely, but his heart felt very heavy. He knew that after what had happened here today, he was no longer as important to his father as before. This filled him with bitterness. All he wanted to do was find the primordial realm expert who had stolen his flower of ways, but he had never thought that he would create such a big mess, even alarming the ancestral emperors of the empire. The Shi Emperor looked at the two ancestral emperors emotionlessly. His gaze was cold. He said, "You finally come. That'll save me a trip to the imperial capital of the Blood Sun Empire. But regarding the mercy I should show, who exactly should I show it to? Is it these god kings? Or the prince who had almost killed my daughter? Or should I show mercy to your Blood Sun Empire?" The Shi Empire spoke icily, his voice filled with heavy killing intent. He was still extremely domineering even before the two ancestral emperors of the Blood Sun Empire. The two ancestral emperors remained calm against the Shi Emperor's forceful words. One of them said, "Please calm down, Shi Emperor. We roughly understand the cause of this matter. This is indeed our fault, but fortunately, the matter hasn't developed into a big mistake. Our Blood Sun Empire will compensate your beloved daughter for her injuries, so we hope the Shi Emperor can be the bigger person and not stoop as low as this junior." The Shi Emperor's face sank suddenly. Killing intent shone in his eyes as he called out coldly, "When I came here, Yuer had already lost an arm. She was extremely heavily injured, and she was at death's door. Moreover, the people of your Blood Sun Empire wanted to force yourself onto her whilst she was so heavily injured. Is that not a big mistake? Or are you saying that it's not a big mistake once Yuer dies?" The more the Shi Emperor spoke, the more furious he became. At that moment, he was like an aggravated lion. He wanted blood. The expressions of the two ancestral emperors did not change. They looked at the Shi Emperor calmly. One of them flipped their hand, and immediately, a droplet of green liquid appeared. It gave off a mysterious pulse. Everyone's soul trembled with the appearance of the liquid. Indescribable comfort welled up in the depths of their souls as if their souls were being strengthened. Even the Divine King and the primordial realm experts of the Heavenly Moon Empire experienced the same thing. The pulses that the liquid gave off could actually affect infinite primes. That seems to be spiritual essence of starry skies. An infinite prime from the imperial family of the Heavenly Moon Empire called out. Spiritual essence of starry skies was stuff of legends to these infinite primes. The future accomplishments of a cultivator and how far they would manage to climb with cultivation was mostly related to their talent and affinity for comprehension. The affinity for comprehension was especially important. Along the path of cultivation, comprehending battle skills, comprehending the mysteries of the world, and grasping the laws of the world were all related to a person's affinity for comprehension. The greater their affinity, the faster they would be able to comprehend battle skills, and the easier they would understand the laws of the world. In the vast saints' world, there were countless people stuck at reciprocity. They were clearly only a step away from godhood, but they would never be able to take this step in their lifetime. This would not be caused by a lack of talent, but rather a lack of affinity for comprehension. They would never be able to grasp the laws of the world and obtain the key to godhood. After reaching godhood, each realm of cultivation required a corresponding amount of comprehension for the laws of the world. This was more than enough to demonstrate just how important the affinity for comprehension was for cultivation. However, the spiritual essence of starry skies just happened to be an absolute treasure that could increase a person's affinity for comprehension. It could even tempt infinite primes. This was because the increase in affinity the spiritual essence of starry skies brought was not temporary, unlike how comprehension T only increased comprehension for a certain time frame. It was permanent. If a droplet of spiritual essence of starry skies was given to someone with poor talent, it would make their affinity for comprehension shocking, turning them into a complete prodigy. Shi Emperor, you should understand the value of this droplet of spiritual essence of starry skies. May I ask if this is enough to resolve your grievances? An ancestral emperor asked. However, the Shi Emperor did not waver at all. He said coldly, "The injuries to Yuer cannot be compensated by anything. Debts of blood must be repaid with blood." The Shi Emperor spoke confidently, without any hesitation at all. Then he turned to look at Shi Yu and said, "You do it. Kill these god kings. I'd like to see who dares to stop it." Towards the end, a powerful presence radiated from the Shi Emperor, crushing down on the two ancestral emperors in an overwhelming manner. The two ancestral emperors who had remained calm for the entire time finally changed in expression slightly. They frowned faintly. The Blood Emperor behind them glanced at the ninth prince slightly. A sliver of coldness appeared in his dignified gaze. He sighed inside and thought, "My ninth son really has gone too far this time." Of all the people he could offend, he just had to choose the Shi Emperor of the Shi Empire. Shiyu hesitated slightly before striking out with confidence. She killed the God Kings without showing any mercy. Faced with Shiyu's attacks, the God Kings who had their cultivations sealed were unable to dodge at all. They could only watch death approach them. The two ancestral emperors from the Blood Sun Empire watched on and did not choose to interfere. They had some understanding of the Shi Emperor's temperament. He was a vicious person who could commit madness for his daughter without looking at the bigger picture at all. His massacre of the many primordial realm experts in the Shi Empire and personal slaughtering of his brothers was the best evidence. Even the authoritative Grand Imperial Protector of the Shi Empire had not been spared. Against someone so vicious, there would definitely be a battle between chaotic primes if they interfered to save these God Kings. Very soon, Shiyu had dealt with all the God Kings who had come with the ninth prince. Sword Chi pierced their foreheads, dispersing their souls and killing them completely. They did not possess a tough body like Jian Chen's chaotic body. They could emerge unscathed from attacks of overgods, but once their cultivation was sealed up, even deities and origin realm experts could hurt them, let alone overgods. Shi Emperor, are you satisfied now? Once all the God Kings died, an ancestral emperor asked. Hand over the ninth prince, the Shi Emperor said emotionlessly. He spoke firmly, leaving no room for negotiation. This time, the two ancestral emperors struggled to remain composed. Their faces changed slightly. Even the Blood Emperor standing behind them revealed an ugly expression. Ignoring the heinous deeds the ninth prince had committed, he was still a member of the imperial family, a direct son of the Blood Sun Empire. His life did not matter, but he did represent the Blood Sun Empire. The hearts of the two ancestral emperors sank. They did not care about the life of the ninth prince. What they truly cared about was the dignity of the Blood Sun Empire. If they really handed over the ninth prince, and the Shi Emperor killed him right in front of them, would their Blood Sun Empire still have any dignity? Shi Emperor, we cannot hand you the prince. You've killed the God Kings and gotten your revenge. We'll compensate everything your beloved daughter has suffered from with this droplet of spiritual essence of starry skies. Let's just leave the matter at this. What do you think, Shi Emperor? Said an ancestral emperor of the Blood Sun Empire. He had also spoken firmly, unwilling to hand over the ninth prince. Shi Emperor, we cannot hand you the prince. You've killed the God Kings and gotten your revenge. We'll compensate everything your beloved daughter has suffered from with this droplet of spiritual essence of starry skies. Let's just leave the matter at this. What do you think, Shi Emperor? Said an ancestral emperor of the Blood Sun Empire. He had also spoken firmly, unwilling to hand over the ninth prince. If their Blood Sun Empire really allowed the ninth prince to be executed over some injuries to the Shi Emperor's beloved daughter, their status in the southern region would plummet. The Shi Emperor did not accept it at all. He snorted coldly, the true person behind Yuer's injuries is still alive, so how have we gotten our revenge? Blood Sun Empire, let me just ask you one question. Are you going to hand him over or not? Shi Emperor, your daughter is completely fine now, so why must you demand so much for this matter? Do you really have to make a huge scene out of a petty matter? Why must you go so far? An ancestral emperor asked. The Blood Emperor did not even possess the right to speak before the two ancestral emperors. My daughter almost died here. That is no petty matter. The Shi Emperor's face was sunken. Killing intent filled his eyes. Afterwards, a ruler's presence began to radiate from him. At that moment, he seemed like the ruler of the world. He stared at the people from the Blood Sun Empire coldly and said with an extremely dignified voice, if you don't hand him over, our Shi Emperor will declare war on your Blood Sun Empire. The Shi Emperor's words were shocking. That short sentence boomed like thunder, deeply stunning everyone present. At that moment, whether it was the people of the Tianyuan clan, the Divine King, or the primordial realm experts from the Heavenly Moon Empire, they were all shocked. They stared at the Shi Emperor in disbelief. The Shi Empire and the Blood Sun Empire represented the northern and southern regions respectively. They were empires who reigned across an entire region. Once a battle between the two eternal empires erupted, it would directly develop into a battle between two regions. The Shi Emperor would actually go as far as to declare war on the Blood Sun Empire for his daughter, regardless of the consequences. It made the expressions of all the people from the Blood Sun Empire change drastically. A madman. The Shi Emperor is a madman beyond control. Although his daughter was injured, isn't she standing beside him right now in perfect condition? Yet he still wants to declare war against our Blood Sun Empire. Doesn't he know how severe the consequences would be once two eternal empires go to war against each other? The Blood Emperor looked at the Shi Emperor as he cursed inside. Only the current emperor of the Shi Empire could do something as absurd as this. The two ancestral emperors became stern at that moment. The emperors of eternal empires did not joke around. Since the Shi Emperor had said he would declare war, he definitely was not lying. He was ready to follow through on his words. No matter how mentally sturdy the ninth prince was, he still paled at this moment. He had never thought that injuring an overgod in a tiny clan would develop into a war between two eternal empires. This had frightened him. As the cause of all this, Shiyu looked at the Shi Emperor with extremely mixed feelings. She experienced a multitude of emotions. Even she could not properly describe what she was feeling right now. It was even more evident for the important members of the Tianyuan clan. They were completely dumbfounded. The two ancestral emperors looked at each other as their eyebrows were locked together tightly. They felt quite the headache when they faced the Shi Emperor, who completely ignored the bigger picture and would do anything for his daughter, even if it meant involving the entire Eternal Empire. "Zun, calm down." At this moment, an ancient voice rang out. With it, the space beside the Shi Emperor rippled, and two ruddy old men emerged silently. They were Shi Haoshuan and Shi Haoming, who had hurried over from the Shi Empire. They were the ancestral emperors of the Shi Empire. As for Shi Haoshuan, he was the father of the current emperor, Shi Ziyun. The appearance of Shi Haoshuan and Shi Haoming did not make the Shi Emperor's expression change at all. On the other hand, the Empress immediately showed respect. She pulled Shiyu over and bowed at Shi Haoshuan and Shi Haoming first before looking at Shiyu. She said gently, "They're your grandfather and great-grandfather. Why don't you greet them?" "Don't. He's not worthy of being your grandfather." However, the Shi Emperor appeared before Shiyu and said emotionlessly right after the Empress spoke. Bitterness immediately filled Shi Haoshuan's face. He sighed gently as he studied Shiyu with his eyes. There was some benevolence in his gaze as well. "Ziyun, there's too much involved in declaring war. You can't say that so easily," Shi Haoming said to the Shi Emperor sternly. "I'm the current emperor and one of the ancestral emperors of the Shi Empire. I have the authority. If the Blood Sun Empire doesn't hand him over, then I can only declare war," the Shi Emperor said coldly. He showed no respect. Shi Haoming also sighed when he saw how stubborn the Shi Emperor was. He felt rather helpless about the Shi Emperor. As an ancestral emperor of the Shi Empire, he was a paramount existence. He represented the supreme authority of the Eternal Empire. If the current emperor dared to turn against him, he could even lay him off with a single word. However, Shi Ziyun was rather special to the point where even Shi Haoming and Shi Haoshuan, his two seniors, had to let him have his way most of the time. "Ziyun, let me talk with the Blood Sun Empire instead. I'll try to reach a solution where we're both happy," Shi Haoming said to the Shi Emperor. In the imperial capital of the Blood Sun Empire in the southern region, Jian Chen and Kaya quickly made their way through the bustling streets. They hurried towards the center of the city. It was closest to the imperial palace there, so it was the safest place in the southern region. The Blood Sun Empire is the ruler of the southern region as the only eternal empire. The imperial palace is important in the Blood Sun Empire as well, so fighting is naturally prohibited. "I hope this place can keep Huayan at bay," Jian Chen thought. Now that he had raised the attention of a vice leader of the Empyrean demon cult, he felt like he was in great danger at all times. After all, a primordial realm expert was hunting him down. Although the Divine King had kept Huayan busy, he understood that this was only temporary. The Divine King could not buy a lot of time for him. After they arrived in the imperial capital of the Blood Sun Empire, Jian Chun contemplated what he should do next. Although the imperial capital of the Blood Sun Empire was the safest place in the southern region, he could not remain here forever. After they arrived in the imperial capital of the Blood Sun Empire, Jian Chun contemplated what he should do next. Although the imperial capital of the Blood Sun Empire was the safest place in the southern region, he could not remain here forever. After all, he could say that he had already fallen out with the 9th prince of the Blood Sun Empire with what had happened in the Een Mountains of Seven's Despair. He was closer than ever to the 9th prince here. Aside from that, although the imperial capital could keep Huayan at bay, it was keeping him at bay at most. If Huayan truly wanted to act recklessly, the Blood Sun Empire would not be able to do anything to him. After all, an extremely terrifying Great Elder supported the Empyrean demon cult behind Huayan. Let alone the eternal Blood Sun Empire, but even those peak clans of the Cloud Plain did not dare to provoke the Great Elder so easily. In the current Cloud Plain, probably nowhere is completely safe apart from the central region. Do I really have to go to the central region? Jian Chun thought. He could not help but think of Tong Tian now that the central region had been brought up. The Tong family that Tong Tian came from was located in the central region. He still possessed the jade pendant Tong Tian had given him. No, I definitely can't go to the central region. Huayan has already come personally to kill me. It means that he already views me as a thorn in his side. If I go to the central region, he'll definitely come pursuing. Once I draw him to the central region, it'll increase the danger to Uncle Xiao as well. Uncle Xiao holds the 9 blood beads and soul beads that the Empyrean demon cult has spent countless years refining. This matter ties into far too many things, so if the people from the Empyrean demon cult learn about this, the consequences will be unimaginable. As a result, I can't go. I can't make it more dangerous for Uncle Xiao, Jian Chun frowned. He discovered that although the Cloud Plain was vast, there was actually nowhere where he could go. This was all because the organization behind Huayan was just too great. Otherwise, although Huayan would be able to move around freely the southern region with his strength as an infinite prime, there would be no need for eternal empires to treat him with caution. Jian Chun, I heard that the Saints' world has a total of 49 great plains and 81 great planets. Our Cloud Plain is only one of the 49 plains. Since we can't stay on the Cloud Plain anymore, why don't we leave temporarily and return once we're powerful enough? Kaya said. Although she had not spent a lot of time conscious in the Saints' world, she possessed some basic understanding. She had also learnt just how powerful the Empyrean demon cult was from what Jian Chun had told her. As a result, she understood just how troublesome of a matter it was now that they had caught the eye of an infinite prime of the Empyrean demon cult. Kaya paused. After some thought, she continued, moreover, with our cultivation speed, I believe we won't need to fear Huayan before long. Leave the Cloud Plain? A sliver of bitterness appeared on Jian Chun's face. It was easy to say that, but it was nowhere close to easy when it came to practice. He did not have 5-colored divine crystals to pay to use the teleportation formations. The teleportation formations between planes were extremely expensive to use. In the past, Fairy Hao Yu even had to kill an extremely powerful primordial realm expert for the Xiandao Empire to obtain enough 5-colored divine crystals to go home. Right now, although Jian Chun possessed supreme quality divine crystals from Yashi Lian, it was still not enough once they had been converted to 5-colored divine crystals. At this moment, the faces of Jian Chun and Kaya changed. They suddenly looked behind them and found that 3 demonic auras radiated from the end of the bustling street. They approached Jian Chun and Kaya extremely quickly. What powerful demonic auras! They're from the Empyrean demon cult. They're god kings from the Empyrean demon cult. They've actually come to the imperial capital of the Blood Sun Empire. The Empyrean demon cult really is too arrogant. They don't even know how to keep a low profile in the imperial capital of the Blood Sun Empire. They're completely looking down on the Blood Sun Empire. The arrival of the 3 late god kings from the Empyrean demon cult immediately attracted the attention of many people in the imperial capital. However, even though they looked at the 3 god kings in displeasure, no one dared to stand forward. As if the 3 god kings wanted the people there to know they were from the Empyrean demon cult, they did not conceal their presences at all even though they were in the imperial capital of the Blood Sun Empire. Their late god king presences surged out as demonic aura emanated into their surroundings, shrouding them as a thick, black mist. At the same time, at the other end of the bustling street several kilometers away, there was a white-robed young man who seemed to be in his 20s with a fan. He strolled around idly with 2 female attendants. When the 3 god kings of the Empyrean demon cult entered the imperial city, the young man stopped. He frowned and said, "The Empyrean demon cult is just too arrogant. What do they think the imperial capital of our Blood Sun Empire is? It's not a place where they can behave as they wish. Your Highness, looking at how they're behaving, they're probably hunting down people that have offended them. Let's just endure a small matter like this." "We can't make a ruckus," a female attendant said from behind the young man. The young man's face sank. Suddenly, he opened his fan and said, "If I just let this pass, will our imperial family still have any pride left?" Jian Chen and Kaya became grim when they sensed the 3 god kings in pursuit. Jian Chen called out, "They've arrived here faster than I imagined. It looks like they don't plan on treating the Blood Sun Empire cautiously at all and plan to eliminate us in the imperial capital. Let's go." Jian Chen grabbed Kaya and immediately took off, approaching the imperial palace of the Blood Sun Empire. However, the 2 of them were unable to take to the skies in the imperial capital. They could only hover along the ground, so their speed was naturally drastically affected as a result. Did you think you'd be safe once you made it to the imperial capital of the Blood Sun Empire? You are far too naive. At this moment, a deep voice rang out from behind. The 3 god kings had already locked onto Jian Chen's presence. They were completely fearless in the imperial capital, where their speeds suddenly exploded, and they directly took to the skies. They made it past Jian Chen and Kaya in the blink of an eye, landing before them to block their path. The vice leader had personally ordered your capture, so even if you escape to the ends of the world, you won't be able to run away from our Empyrean demon cult. Just give up, sneered a god king. He directly attacked the 2 of them after that. Clearly, he was unwilling to waste too much time. After all, this was the imperial capital of the Blood Sun Empire. Although their statuses could act as a form of deterrence, it would not benefit them at all if they wasted too much time. Jian Chen and Kaya became extremely stern. Jian Chen equipped his god artifact as soon as possible and circulated the chaotic force within him, pushing the defenses of the chaotic body to the limit. He even drew the cracked, startling rainbow sword. The Empyrean demon cult really is getting bolder and bolder. At this moment, a cold snort rang out from behind. With a flash, a person appeared before Jian Chen and Kaya. He was a young man who wore white robes and held a fan. The young man's face did not change when he was faced with the attacks of the 3 god kings. He directly swung his fan. Immediately, the air around them moved. The world seemed to be flipped from the young man's action. The power of laws in the young man's fan seemed to affect the space there, making it become slightly different. The attacks from the 3 god kings rebounded without any prior signs when they came in contact with the space. The energy that they sent towards Jian Chen and Kaya had been reflected back towards them. The expressions of the 3 god kings changed. However, they were experienced after all, so even though this had happened suddenly, they reacted as quickly as possible. God King level laws descended, and they sent out a second attack to nullify the first. Immediately, powerful energy splayed out. If they were in the wilderness, the energy would be powerful enough to crush mountains. However, an extremely powerful formation protected the imperial capital of the Blood Sun Empire, so the energy naturally failed to cause any damage at all. The young man had nullified the attacks from the 3 late god kings single-handedly. Moreover, he remained composed without losing the upper hand at all. He was clearly extremely powerful. The young man had nullified the attacks from the 3 late god kings single-handedly. Moreover, he remained composed without losing the upper hand at all. He was clearly extremely powerful. As Jianchen encountered more and more god kings, even clashing with some several times, he started to possess some understanding towards them. When the young man moved, Jianchen could clearly sense that he was also a late god king like the god kings from the Empyrean demon cult. They were at the same level of cultivation, yet the young man managed to match them all by himself. He was definitely a great prodigy. The imperial capital of the Blood Sun Empire really is a nest of monsters. Just a random person can be this powerful. Jianchen was secretly surprised. Before him, the 3 god kings from the Empyrean demon cult churned with demonic aura, which shrouded their figures in black mist. One of them said sternly, "Who are you, bold enough to get in the way of the Empyrean demon cult's matters? Leave immediately, and we can forget about what you just did. Otherwise, you will become an enemy of the Empyrean demon cult." The Empyrean demon cult had always acted as they wished on the Cloud Plain. Even after arriving in the imperial capital of the Blood Sun Empire, they did not tone it down in the slightest. They were completely fearless. The young man opened his fan and flapped it leisurely. He sneered, "Aren't the 3 of you looking down on the Blood Sun Empire too much? Why don't you look at where you are with what you said before? You dare to threaten me in my own territory? Let alone you 3 unimpressive protectors, even if your vice leader comes here personally, he'll have to consider something like that properly before doing anything." At this moment, a large number of guards that belonged to the imperial capital hurried over from the surroundings. Several god kings had already flown out from the imperial palace as well, approaching them with lightning speed. In just a few seconds, the 3 god kings from the Empyrean demon cult were surrounded. The god kings from the imperial palace looked at them coldly as they surrounded them. They had already emitted their tremendous presences slowly. Even though they were surrounded, the 3 god kings remained composed. They did not become flustered at all. One of them said, "The vice leader has personally ordered the capture of these 2 people. Does your Blood Sun Empire plan on protecting them? I have no interests in who the vice leader wants to capture. This is the imperial capital of the Blood Sun Empire, not a place where you can act as you wish. Your Empyrean demon cult still hasn't achieved absolute supremacy in the southern region. Please return. Otherwise, I can only send you out of the city," the white-robed young man said coldly. The 3 protectors of the Empyrean demon cult contemplated it shortly. After judging the situation they were in, they could only leave powerlessly in the end. With the departure of the 3 protectors, Jianchen clasped his fist at the young man and said, "I'm Jianchen. Thank you for your help today. I will remember the kindness you have shown." Jianchen? The young man's eyes immediately narrowed when he heard Jianchen's name. He stared at Jianchen with some surprise. "You're that Jianchen who defeated a god king in the northern region?" "That's me," said Jianchen. The young man smiled slightly and studied Jianchen. He said, "No wonder the 3 protectors of the Empyrean demon cult are hunting you down while you're still an overgod. You captured Yashi Lian in the past and got the divine king to use her as a hostage, forcing Huayan to agree to his terms. With Huayan's temperament, he'll definitely nurse a grievance because of that. Moreover, you're a supreme overgod who can make it onto the overgod's plaque with your impressive talent. You'll pose quite the threat to the Empyrean demon cult in the future, so Huayan will definitely move against you. Of the 3 vice leaders, Huayan is the most intolerant and vengeful. You need to be more careful now that you've caught Huayan's eyes." As soon as he reached there, the young man paused. He gazed off into the distance and became stern. He said, "It looks like Huayan treats you with far more importance than I had imagined. He has actually come personally. Jianchen, you better leave here fast." As a vice leader of the Empyrean demon cult, Huayan possesses various secret technique. Coupled with his cultivation as an infinite prime, he will be able to deal with you easily without violating any rules of our Blood Sun Empire. Huayan had arrived extremely quickly. Before the young man had even finished speaking, Huayan had appeared on the street silently. He stared at Jianchen coldly. On the other hand, Jianchen did not hesitate at all. He left as quickly as he could with Kaiya, disappearing from the street in an instant. The white-clothed young man only stood before Huayan. He said steadily, "I never thought that the famed vice leader of the Empyrean demon cult, Huayan, would personally visit our Blood Sun Empire. I wonder whether our Blood Sun Empire should receive you as an esteemed guest, or maintain the status quo and directly ask you to leave. Vice Leader Huayan, you're making it very difficult for me." Huayan was just about to pursue Jianchen. He looked at the young man before him, and he immediately frowned. He did not recognize this young man, but seeing how he did not fear him as a mere god king and the fact that he had used "our" when referring to the empire, Huayan instantly determined that this young man was a part of the imperial family. Moreover, he possessed quite some status in the family. However, it did not matter even if he had some status. As a vice leader of the Empyrean demon cult, even the ancestral emperors of the Blood Sun Empire would fear him slightly. He immediately snorted coldly, "I've come to capture wanted people. I have no time to tangle with you. Leave immediately, or don't blame me for being rude." As he said that, the pressure of the primordial realm radiated from Huayan, directly forcing the young man away. "Huayan, this is the Blood Sun Empire, not your Empyrean demon cult. If you want to act so recklessly, I can only make you leave the imperial capital." Just when Huayan released his pressure, a heavy and clear voice directly rang out in his head from the imperial palace. I naturally know the rules of your Blood Sun Empire. My visit today has nothing to do with you. As long as you don't get in my way, I won't violate any of your rules," Huayan replied coldly. He no longer bothered to deal with the young man, disappearing with a flash in pursuit of Jianchen. The young man with a fan looked in the direction where Huayan had vanished off to. There was a sliver of reluctance in his eyes, and he said to the imperial palace, "Imperial Protector, Jianchen is a talent of our southern region after all. He'll definitely become an expert who can dominate the region in the future. Are we just supposed to watch the Empyrean demon cult do harm to him from the sidelines? There are countless talents in the saints' world, and even many unprecedented prodigies. However, just how many of them are able to make it to the apex in the end? Even if they're first on the Overgod's plaque or first on the God King's throne, aren't there many examples where they die before they can rise to the peak of their power? There's no need to offend the Empyrean demon cult over such matters." The heavy and clear voice rang out again from the imperial palace, but only the young man could hear it. Currently, Jianchen and Kaiya moved through the streets of the imperial capital rapidly, trying to pull as far away from Huayan as possible. He thought of any plans he could use. However, at this moment, Jianchen and Kaiya both stopped as they hovered above the ground. They gazed ahead. Before them stood a white-robed, ruddy old man. He stared at Jianchen and Kaiya with a strange light in his eyes. "Chanlong, how are you here?" Kaiya asked. She was surprised. The old man was Master Chanlong, the person that Jianchen had some conflict with in the past. However, Jianchen's grievances with Master Chanlong had gradually been resolved through the gratitude Jianchen felt towards him for saving Kaiya when the 7 protectors of the Earth Spirit sect killed their way into the provincial city of the Dong'an province. Jianchen also felt extremely surprised about meeting Chanlong here. Master Chanlong became extremely stern. He said with a deep voice, "I know you're in extremely deep trouble. Don't say anything, just follow me quickly." Before he had even finished speaking, Master Chanlong turned around and left. Jianchen and Kaiya looked at each other. Although they had no idea what Master Chanlong had in mind, they clearly had no other choices at a time like this. They could only follow Master Chanlong closely. Under Master Chanlong's lead, the 3 of them arrived at an extremely large square in the imperial capital very soon. Just the width of the square was several dozen kilometers, and it was completely packed. The most eye-catching part of it was an extremely large flying vehicle parked at the very center of the square. It was several dozen kilometers long and several dozen kilometers high. It hovered in the sky like an imposing mountain, basically taking up the entire square. Just a single glance at it would make people feel overwhelmed. Take this and board the ship with me quickly. Once we're on the spatial battleship, we'll be temporarily safe. Master Chanlong gave a jade talisman to Kaiya and Jianchen before taking them towards the spatial battleship quickly. Spatial battleship? A sliver of doubt appeared in Jianchen's eyes. He looked at the humongous flying vehicle before him in confusion as he followed Chanlong towards it. At this moment, he no longer cared about the purposes the spatial battleship served. Even if he had to wade through a world of danger to evade the pursuit of an infinite prime, he would do it. Jianchen, stop. Just when Jianchen was about to board the spatial battleship, a thunderous voice boomed in his head. The terrifying sound waves rebounded in Jianchen's head, causing his soul to rock violently, almost collapsing. His consciousness became blurred while the chaotic force within him paused at that moment. He had almost fallen out of the sky. Behind them, Huayan hurried over as he stared at Jianchen with a sunken face. Beside Jianchen, Kaiya sensed what was happening and immediately grabbed Jianchen's shoulder. Her speed suddenly exploded as she flew towards the cabin door. Don't you even think about leaving the cloud plane. Huayan was pale. At that moment, he could no longer care about breaking the rules of the Blood Sun Empire. He raised his hand and reached towards Jianchen from afar. As he extended his hand, his entire arm elongated. His hand had turned into a black cloud that obscured the sky and trapped space, lunging towards Jianchen and Kaiya. Kaiya and Jianchen immediately sank. The tremendous pressure had immobilized the two of them. They could only watch on as Huayan's hand fell towards them. Chapter 1987. The Red-Robed Old Man. This was the second time Huayan had attacked Jianchen and Kaiya. The first time, he had just casually struck out. He did not aim to injure Jianchen and Kaiya. Rather, he wanted to draw out the Divine King who was hiding in the shadows. As a result, Jianchen and Kaiya were still able to fight back at that time. Even though they were as insignificant as ants to primordial realm experts, they could still bite back during the prior encounter. However, now that Jianchen and Kaiya were about to enter the spatial battleship, Huayan, who understood the vehicle's power very well, directly struck out furiously in a panic. The might of this strike was far greater than the one when he first attacked them. Just the tremendous pressure had frozen Kaiya and Jianchen. Master Chanlong's face changed all of a sudden. He wanted to hurry back to save Kaiya, but there was nothing he could do against a strike from a primordial realm expert. Huayan, aren't you looking down on the Blood Sun Empire too much? It looks like it's time to show that your Empyrean demon cult has become swollen with arrogance. At this moment, an elderly voice rang out. A red-robed old man had silently appeared above the spatial battleship. The old man kept his presence concealed, making it impossible to tell his cultivation level or detect his existence. He seemed to have fused with the entire sky when he appeared. The old man looked at Huayan coldly and raised his right hand calmly. He gently extended a finger towards the hand that reached towards Jianchen and Kaiya. The movement seemed simple. It did not give off any pulses of energy, nor did any particular pressure accompany it. However, the space before the old man suddenly contracted and produced a ripple in space, spreading out at an unbelievable speed. When Huayan's huge hand was only 10 meters away from Jianchen and Kaiya, it suddenly came to a halt. The space around it seemed to have been frozen at that moment. However, the effects of the gesture clearly did not just end there. In the next moment, the space in the area shattered loudly from the pulse, forming a huge crack. Countless spatial shards and spatial wind surged out, surrounding Huayan's hand. The spatial shards and wind were extremely terrifying. Huayan's hand was reduced to a bloody mess in a single instance from the ravaging of the shards and wind. Huayan's gaze was cold. He looked at the old man emotionlessly. The old man had trapped his right hand there, so he had to endure the ravaging of the spatial shards and wind. No matter how hard he tried, his hand remained trapped there. However, he completely ignored his right hand. He looked at Jianchen, and his killing intent immediately erupted. With a thought, a sword appeared over his head. It was red as if it had been doused with blood. The moment it appeared, it gave off an extremely heavy smell of blood. The wails of countless ghosts seemed to emerge as countless souls struggled in there. Clearly, the sword had been covered in blood for who knows how long. It had completely turned into a demonic artifact. Swish! As soon as the sword had appeared, it shot off as a red streak of light, directly slashing through space towards Jianqin. Huaiyan's desire to kill Jianqin had already reached the point of no return. Now that Jianqin was about to board the spatial battleship and leave the cloud plane, he could not allow it. As a result, he basically wanted to kill Jianqin regardless of the consequences right now, even if he had to offend the Blood Sun Empire, even if he had to lose an arm. The red sword moved extremely quickly, so fast that distance seemed insignificant before it. With a flash, it arrived before Jianqin, stabbing towards his head with a bloody presence. However, it was also at this moment that the space around Jianqin and Kaya pulsed gently. In this moment of life and death, Jianqin and Kaya vanished. The sword hit nothing. Huaiyan's gaze shifted upwards slightly. He looked at the huge cabin door of the spatial battleship and saw that Jianqin and Kaya had already appeared outside the cabin silently. They were just about to enter. This person is wanted by our Empyrean demon cult. He is related to a major matter that has happened to our cult recently. If you stop me, you are opposing the Empyrean demon cult. I will definitely report this matter to the higher-ups. Once the Great Elder is alarmed, you won't be able to endure the consequences, Huaiyan roared out. With a thought, the sword flashed and continued towards Jianqin. He was not afraid of failing to kill Jianqin. His demonic artifact had the ability to devour souls. Those who were slain by the sword could have their souls directly wiped out if he chose to. As long as he injured Jianqin with the sword, even if it just scratched him, his demonic artifact could suck away Jianqin's soul instantly. The red-robed old man did not waver at all from Huaiyan's threats. Do you think that you'll be able to scare me once you mention the Great Elder of the Empyrean demon cult? I tell you what's even more funny? A mere overgod being able to alarm the Great Elder that rarely ever appears. Huaiyan, don't you think what you're saying is rather hilarious? With that, the old man grabbed at space. With his gesture, the world seemed to enter his palm, and the sword that shot towards Jianqin appeared in his hand silently. The old man gripped the blade with 2 fingers. No matter how the sword struggled, it was unable to break free from the old man's grasp. At this moment, Kaya had already grabbed Jianqin's shoulder, entering the spatial battleship with Chanlong. They had vanished from Huaiyan's view. Huaiyan's face became terrifyingly sunken. He understood the power of the spatial battleship. Once Jianqin had entered the cabin, it would mean he had lost his opportunity to eliminate Jianqin unless this overgod decided to come out again. Naturally, the spatial battleship would come across various dangers as it moved through outer space. It would even encounter the attacks of extremely powerful space beasts. As a result, various formations covered the spatial battleship, making it extremely powerful in terms of both offense and defense. With his cultivation as a first heavenly layer infinite prime, there was nothing he could do to it. Chapter 1988, Houston's disaster. As for tailing the spatial battleship along the way and killing Jianqin after he disembarked, that was even more impossible. This was because once the spatial battleship reached outer space and set off, even 9th heavenly layer infinite primes would not be able to follow it. Probably only chaotic primes could match its speed. After all, it was a form of transportation between the 49 Great Planes and the 81 Great Planets of the Saints' world. Naturally, it would have to move extremely quickly. Outside the spatial battleship, Huaiyan stared at Jianqin, who had disappeared into the cabin door, with a sunken face. He greatly resented the red-robed old man who had stopped him. If it were not for this old man who had interfered time and time again, Jianqin would already be in his hands. Unfortunately, despite also being an infinite prime, he was not as powerful as the red-robed old man, so he could only bury the hatred in his heart. "Why, leave the imperial capital," said the red-robed old man. His indifferent voice possessed a certain coldness. The Empyrean demon cult was an existence many organizations on the cloud plane found repulsive. If it were not for the mysterious and terrifying Great Elder, The Empyrean demon cult definitely would not still exist after what it had done throughout the years. Only now did Huayan draw his right hand back. His entire hand had vanished already. However, he paid no attention to the injuries of his arm. He stared at the red-robed old man emotionlessly and snorted coldly before directly leaving. He had already lost his chance to kill Jianqin. Now, in the cabin, Jianqin gradually recovered from the bellow that had stunned his soul. Afterwards, under Master Chanlong's lead, they made their way through the spatial battleship before stopping in an extremely large cabin. The cabin was clearly at the bottom of the spatial battleship. Several hundred cushion-sized pedestals were set up neatly there, and quite a few people were scattered across them. Under Master Chanlong's lead, Jianqin and Kai sat down on the pedestals as well. What is this place? Jianqin looked around. He was in doubt. Master Chanlong sat on a pedestal beside Jianqin. He said to Jianqin and Kai secretly, spatial battleships are extremely well-known vehicles for transportation in the Saints' world. They are for journeys between planes. Although there are teleportation formations across planes in the Saints' world, they're extremely expensive to use. Even some primordial realm experts can't afford to use them. As for spatial battleships, they are much cheaper than the teleportation formations such that even a few deities can afford to use them. The only downside is that they are much slower compared to teleportation formations. Teleportation formations can traverse the distance between planes in an extremely short amount of time, no matter how far apart they are. However, spatial battleships need years, decades, or even centuries to reach their destination. Clearly, Master Chanlong understood spatial battleships extremely well. He explained them to Jianqin and Kai. Jianqin knew that he was about to leave the cloud plane on the spatial battleship. He completely fell silent as the matter weighed on his heart. His face was filled with worry. Everything had happened just too suddenly. He was not prepared. In particular, he was worried about the Tianyuan clan. This was because Rui Jin, Hong Lian, He Yu, Newbies, Sacred Feather, and so on, the people who had come up from the Tianyuan continent with him, all remained in the Tianyuan clan. Now, I can only hope that the Divine King can protect the Tianyuan clan, Jianqin thought. He was filled with bitterness. He had never thought that as a mighty vice leader of the Empyrean demon cult and a powerful primordial realm expert, Huayan would actually come personally to kill a mere overgod like him. He was indeed helpless against the pursuit of a primordial realm expert with his current strength. Even fleeing was wishful thinking. If experts from the Blood Sun Empire had not stopped Huayan, he would fail to even board this spatial battleship. I really had no choice with leaving this time. Huayan, I will return. Jianqin clasped his hands as his eyes shone with determination. Back on the cloud plane, not only was the central region the center of the vast place, but it was also the most prosperous region of the cloud plane. Most of the organizations who stood at the peak of the cloud plane were located here. Moreover, the only everlasting empire of the entire cloud plane was located here as well. Right now, in the remote wilderness of the central region, Houston currently fled in a disheveled shape in his blood-red robes. He was covered in wounds right now, and every single one of them was vicious, where blood constantly poured out. He faced the merciless pursuit of over a dozen god kings. Behind him, the god kings looked at Houston with burning desire. They pursued him as they fought against the god kings around them. All of them wanted to approach Houston first, but none of them wanted someone else to be faster than them. Once they made it to the front, they would be faced with the merciless attacks of people beside or behind them. As a result, even though more than a dozen god kings were chasing an overgod, they were unable to catch up to him due to the interference from the people around them. The god artifact is mine. All of you piss off. Whoever gets in this king's way, this king will pay you a visit once this matter has concluded. The god kings all bellowed out furiously. Many of their eyes were bloodshot. Houston's god artifact made their hearts beat heavily as blood surged through their bodies. God artifacts were items that even many primordial realm experts did not possess. It tempted them greatly. Ahead, Houston constantly coughed up blood. After arriving in the central region, he originally wanted to find a remote location for cultivation. However, he had never thought he would come across a powerful beast in the wilderness, forcing him to use the Empyrean demon orb against it. It was also at this time that a passing God King discovered the Empyrean demon orb and became interested in it, forcing Houston to reveal the secret that he possessed a god artifact on him. Houston was not the opponent of a God King at all. If it were not for the Empyrean demon orb, he probably would not even have been able to escape. As a result, he used the Empyrean demon orb to flee. He was forced to use the Empyrean demon orb against the pursuit of a God King, or he would have ended up in his hands much earlier on. As a result, he was unable to store the Empyrean demon cult away and keep it hidden. This also resulted in the special presence of a god artifact that the Empyrean demon cult possessed to draw over even more God Kings, which increased from the initial one to over a dozen now. You're tuning in to the Passion Pages YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.